6:45, so
Recording in progress.
6:45, welcome everyone to the November 14th, 2023 meeting of the Planning Commission. This is our first meeting in 5 months since May 23rd. 6 months? Wow, okay. So first on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Can you all rise? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam City Clerk, can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Fung,
Present.
Commissioner Linskog,
Present.
Commissioner Mystery,
Present.
Vice Chair Manipatla,
I'm here.
Chair Scharf.
Present. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the May 23rd Planning Commission. If the commissioners can all take a moment to look it over, and someone can make a motion for the approval.
Who's doing it?
I'll make a motion to approve May 23rd meeting minutes.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, can we have a vote? Roll call? Oh, we know we can vote with our lights, right?
Did it work? I have no idea.
There it goes, okay.
Motion carries unanimously.
Oh, yeah, there.
Okay, are there any postponements?
No postponements.
Okay. Oh, the next part of the meeting is oral communications. This is where you can speak on any item not on the agenda for tonight. In most cases, state law will prohibit us from making any decisions with respect to a matter not on the agenda. However, we could put it on the agenda in a future meeting if there's an interest in doing that. Do we have any oral cards?
No blue speaker cards in Community Hall, but I do see one hand raised on Zoom.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and let that person speak. I have not opened the link yet.
Okay, San R should be ready to speak.
Okay, welcome, San R.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Yes, good evening, Planning Commission. It's highly disheartening that this commission is meeting for the first time after May. And I think the public deserves to know why these meetings are getting canceled and who makes the decision on canceling this meeting and what is the role of the chair and the commission members in ensuring that this meeting is actually going to function. It's really concerning that this is the most important commission perhaps of all the many commissions we have, and you have not met since May. That's almost half the year. We are at the end of the year and we have had no commission meetings, and we'd like to know why that is the case. And the public would like to know why commission members are not doing more to try and ensure this meeting runs on schedule and that the hybrid access is also maintained. Thank you for the Zoom access for the meeting today. I know the Parks and Rec Commission has stopped hybrid access. Hopefully that will be restored soon. But I urge all commissioners, and particularly the chair, to take all steps possible to ensure this meeting does not cancel. And secondly, I would like to draw your attention to ensuring the public is kept informed of builders' remedy projects in the city. How is the public to discover what builders' remedy projects have been brought to the city, and what is the proposal that has been brought, and what are the current status on these builders' remedy projects? I urge you to look at the adjacent cities in Saratoga and Los Altos, where the planning commissions are far more active, and the community is able to understand what builders' remedy projects have been brought forth and what what read
Are you still there? Okay, I think we lost San R. Okay, moving on. Were there any written communications for oral, for non-agenda items?
No, Chair Scharf.
Okay. Okay, we are on to the consent calendar that has nothing. So now we are on to public hearings. Item 2. The first item is a municipal code amendment to Chapter 19.76 and a conditional use permit and parking exception for the use of a former public school site for a private K through 9 educational facility, application number MCA 2023-003, U 2023-002, EXC 2023-009. The applicant is the City of Cupertino. Grace Stannett on behalf of Tessellations. The location is 1170 Yorkshire Drive, assessor parcel number 362080001. Can we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry.
I just need to report out regarding the plan sets regarding SB 1214
Okay, yes,
real
go
quick.
ahead, Lori.
So effective January 1st, 2023, Government Code Section 65103.5, Senate Bill 1214, limits the distribution of copyright materials associated with the review of development projects. Members of the public wishing to view plans that cannot otherwise be distributed under SB 1214 may make an appointment with the Planning Division to view them at City Hall by sending an email to planning@cupertino.org. Plans will also be made available digitally during the hearing to consider the proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Michael, I don't know if this is the time to talk about ex parte communications.
This is a perfect time to
Okay,
bring
so
that up.
I did meet with 2 members of the staff of Tessellations this morning and one this afternoon, including Grace Stannett, who's here today. And I'm sorry, I can't remember Christine Gupta. Yeah, and Christine Gupta. So I did meet with them. I also had a phone conversation with a resident that called me as well, Carl Fong. Yeah, go.
Okay, so on my part, disclosure. So I did visit the site twice today, once in the morning and once in the evening, to observe the traffic patterns and also, things that that I wanted to learn for myself, right? So and so I visited. Also went to the school and met with the staff and Mr. Grace Tennant and Ms. Christine Gupta. They were extremely kind and helpful. They showed me the school and and various facilities and what they have now and what they're planning to do in future and all that. So thank you for that. I also shared what I learned about the school in a couple of larger WhatsApp groups. Just simply hey, here is what I learned, and you are welcome to come and attend and speak if you are interested on this topic. So.
Okay, anyone else? Oh.
Yeah, I went and met with a couple of the school staff this morning as well. I went to the school and I walked around and observed the parking. I spoke with Mr. Tennant and Ms. Gupta as well, and they walked me around and showed me the current parking situation and the planned parking as well. And I also drove around the neighborhood and observed how much street parking there was to get a sense for what that looks like.
Yeah, and I visited the school yesterday and today. I did not meet with anybody from the staff, but I did get a call from Eva Chow, one of the CUSD board members today.
And I guess I'm last. I did not meet with anyone from the school, but I have driven around this school a few times, including this afternoon, just to get a sense of parking as well.
Okay, great. I'm glad to see all the commissioners are taking this very seriously. Okay, now can we have the staff report?
Yes, thank you, Chair Scharf, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Luke Connolly, the Assistant Director of Community Development. I just wanted to give kind of a brief opening before I turn over the staff presentation to Emi Sugiyama, who's the project planner for this project. In case there's anybody attending the meeting tonight that may not be aware, one of the reasons we have both code amendment and a use permit on the same agenda for this is that unlike most uses where you have a pending permit, this use is already under operation. So I just wanted to clarify that this does involve both the code amendment and the use permit. Code amendments typically would be done first. In this case, because we have a use that is under operation, we're trying to expedite things. So this is also agendized based on the Planning Commission's recommendation tonight to go to the City Council on December 5th. In case anybody's not aware, that is the plan for our meeting. So I know we have the applicant here as well, and I assume we have quite a few residents of the neighborhood that are interested in the project. So just wanted to get that out there in case there was any lack of knowledge as to why this is being moved through at a fairly quick pace. With that, I will turn the staff presentation over to Emi then, and the applicant, I think, will be giving a presentation afterward as well. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Chair Sharf and Commissioners. Emi Sugiyama, Planning Staff, and here today to discuss the request by the City of Cupertino for the Municipal Code Amendment, and then the request by Tessellations for a conditional use permit and parking exception. Absolutely. So the Municipal Code Amendment proposes an addition to Chapter 1976 to clarify the conditionally allowed uses on BA or public building zoned sites, and to specifically allow privately operated public serving uses. This would codify a historical practice by the city which would allow for private uses on BA zoned sites, so long as they receive approval of a conditional use permit and review by the Planning Commission. The use permit is specifically for the use of the former Regnar Elementary School site for a private school operation. This is located at 1170 Yorkshire Drive and is in the BA zoning district. And Tessellations is proposing a pre-K through 9th grade school operation for up to 300 students and 85 staff with an after-school program for up to 125 of those students. They are also proposing a summer school operation for up to 300 students and 60 staff, and then also large and small school-related events. The majority of these operations would take place between 7:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. As for drop-off and pickup, the school is proposing the use of the existing parking lot loop. For drop-off, this would occur between 8 a.m. and 8:15 a.m., and they would have 5 staff members monitoring and facilitating cars moving through. And then for pickup, this would occur at 3:15 p.m. for the majority of students, and they would have 7 staff members monitoring and facilitating movement through that parking and drop-off area. Now, the applicant is also requesting a parking exception to accommodate the 148 parking spaces that are required through alternative means. They are first proposing an additional 20 spaces on site. That would result in 67 spaces total on the property. And so here you can see the location as well as the layout of those proposed 20 spaces on the property. And then for the additional 81 spaces, the school is proposing the use of a satellite parking lot located at the New Life Church off of McClellan Road. And they would be providing shuttles between this location and their campus. For events, the applicant is proposing the use of their blacktop area for an additional 100 parking spaces. And then as noted by Assistant Director Connolly, the Municipal Code Amendment does require review by our City Council, and so we are bringing these forward to City Council together, and that meeting date is set for December 5th. And with that, staff is recommending that your commission adopt the proposed draft resolutions, which would recommend that the City Council adopt the Municipal Code Amendment, approve the conditional use permit, and approve the parking exception. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, wonderful. Before we move on to the applicant's presentation, on the agenda it says K through 9, and you keep saying pre-K through 9, so which is it?
It would be pre-K through 9.
Okay, so the agenda is incorrect. Okay, very good. So next we can hear from the applicant. Welcome. You have 10 minutes. Not required to use all 10 minutes, though.
I'll use the first 5 seconds to start my watch and try to stay on target. Commissioner Scharf and Chair Scharf and Commissioners, thank you for having us here. My name is Grace Stannett. I am the head of school at Tessellations. My hope tonight is to breathe some real person life into who we are so that you know who's actually making this application. We are a nonprofit school. We were founded in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic. We serve the gifted population specifically, and I will cover that in the next slide. We are a progressive school. Currently, we are K through 8. We are hoping to open a preschool in January and a high school in the fall. So next year, we propose to be pre-K through 9th. After that, we will move the 9th grade to a different site, and we will go back to being pre-K through 8th on the Regnard site. Next slide, please. So giftedness, the Columbus Group's definition in 1991 is giftedness is asynchronous development in which advanced cognitive abilities and heightened intensity combine to create inner experiences and awareness that are qualitatively different from the norm. Pardon me for not memorizing that. That is a lot of big words. What do I mean by that? The phrase to focus on here is asynchronous development. So a gifted child, an asynchronously developing child, is one who may be ahead in one area and not so much in another. So for example, they may be advanced in terms of abstract thinking or artistic ability or math or creativity or literacy, and they may be at grade level or less ahead in other subjects. So if you will, our kids are bumpy. Next slide, please. Why does this matter? Our kids have different academic needs. They appreciate experiential learning rather than lecturing. We study fewer things and we study them more deeply because that is more meaningful for them. We don't do repetitive work, so very little drills and worksheets, really no drills and worksheets. A strong connection to nature because that is meaningful to them. We meet them where they are. For example, we have 9 grades of kids, K through 8 now. We have 14 levels of math. Our highest math learners are doing AP Statistics, which is a college level course. So we serve kids that go far beyond the norm. They have different social emotional needs, right? So social emotional learning is a buzzword now, and most schools use it. We consider social emotional learning to be as important as academic learning, and those social emotional needs for our population are actually higher than the norm. Our kids are often intense, sensitive, and highly empathetic. To handle this, we use small class sizes. We top out at 18 and 2 teachers in a classroom. So that contrasts to the normal 30 kids and 1 teacher in a classroom. Our kids are generally intrinsically motivated. Most schools subscribe to an external motivation system. Grades. Grades are external motivators. Parents are sometimes external motivators. Our kids generally don't respond to that. They are motivated by what they think is important. So we're a non-competitive school. We don't give grades. We use narrative transcripts. We don't pit the kids against each other. We help them to work together. This population is basically left behind by the public schools and by most private schools. That's nobody's fault. It's hard to serve this population. They are also at risk. Mental health issues abound for this population if they are not properly served. So suicide, dropout, the works. So they are a population that needs needs a place, just like every population. And they're an important population. I would argue that much of what is important that is happening in the world today is happening when spiky, diverse groups of people, asynchronously developing gifted people, if you will, are working together. Silicon Valley is basically a giant petri dish of these people. Next slide. These are some of our kids spending their day a week outside the classroom, as they all do. Next slide. These are our youngers on campus. Next slide. Our community is not just the kids, it's also the families. Giftedness is genetic, so our families are gifted too. They are generally other-oriented. Again, this goes with high empathy. They take perspective of others easily. So we leave things in better stead than we found them, and that means a conversation or a person or a planet or a school campus. Next slide. This is where we come from, all over. This makes sense because our school is different, and so people have trouble finding a school to serve their kid, so they will come from a long way. Only 5% of our population comes from Cupertino. Next slide. That was actually important when we applied for this, when we applied for this lease with CUSD. They wanted to know that we would not negatively impact CUSD. So we have very little impact on CUSD. I've actually heard somewhat of a strange rumor that our big goal is to shut down Monte Vista High School. So I want to do some math for you here. 5% of students live in Cupertino. In K through 8, that's 9 students for us compared to the 14,000 students in CUSD. Our high school, if and when it reaches capacity at 300 kids, 15 kids will be from Cupertino compared to 9,000 that live in high school kids that live in Cupertino. Over half those kids, probably a lot over half, are actually coming from other private schools. They're not coming from public school. And there's 5 high schools in Cupertino. So if you boil this all down, we're potentially stealing half a kid a year from Monte Vista. So I want to put to rest the idea that we could ever possibly impact the giant that is Monte Vista High School. We simply cannot. And on top of all that, it's a different population. If a kid comes to us from Monte Vista, it's because they need to, and they need to be served, not because we stole them. Next slide. We're a good business. We take care of our families. Our attrition rate is 4% instead of the normal 11% for California independent schools. Job applications are at 1,700 plus for last year. Other heads of school say, hey, your decimal point is the wrong place. But the word's out. We're a good place to work. Next slide. We're really proud to be in Cupertino. Since we were online, we've always been in Cupertino. Even when we didn't even have a physical premises, we were kind of based here. And we hope that you're proud that we are here too. In less than 4 years, we have become an extremely sought-after school in the Bay Area. Our applications are through the roof. We are a beacon to gifted schools nationwide, and there just aren't very many of them, so this beacon is necessary. This school desperately needs to exist, and I hope it can be yet another thing that makes Cupertino special. Next slide. These are notes from our kindergartners to our preschoolers coming in. Next slide. That's a good one to close on. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Now we will move on to public comment. So each person will get 3 minutes. Hopefully you turned in a blue speaker card, although it is not required. You can speak without it. If you wish to pool your time, that's acceptable too.
So we have 10 blue speaker cards in Community Hall, and I'm seeing 7 hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, we will take the in-person speakers first. First, we have Vic Menon. Welcome, Vic.
Okay, first let me introduce myself. I'm Vic Menon. I'm a longtime resident of Yorkshire Drive, on Yorkshire Drive, and also have experience working with developmentally challenged kids myself, so I appreciate what Grace went through. Let me start by appreciating the progress that's been made so far. Tessellations has removed about 24 vehicles from neighborhood streets, thanks to staff carpooling, walking, and biking. We need to build on this initial progress, though, and go further. And so my talk is going to focus on more quantitative things. Some of my neighbors will talk later about the humanistic side, like safety and open space. So I'd like to focus first on events, and there are a lot of events, numerous events at Tessellations, and I would agree with them that shuttle services are essential to keeping vehicles off the neighborhood streets and avoiding the adverse impacts that are required under the terms of the building permit exception. I'm glad to see the initial steps in that direction. The issue is that when you do the math, we need to ensure that there's a large program for shuttle services. Tessellations expects 7 larger school events per year attended by 500 people. In addition, there would be numerous smaller events throughout the year. Let's look at one of those events, Celebration of Learnings, to be held during the normal school day. It involves 13 different homerooms involving 15 students each. Parents, grandparents, and other relatives may come from all over the Bay Area. There could easily be 20 to 25 cars for each of the 13 homerooms, a total of 260 to 325 cars. So on the surface, shuttle services are really going to be necessary. Where will this many cars park and then visitors shuttled over to Tessellations? So anticipating the problem, I want to be constructive in suggesting a resource. If the school needs more parking spaces for itself and or its sub-lessees, there are 162 spaces at Blackberry Farm and 25 spaces at McClellan Ranch that the school vans pass by every day. In addition, in terms of staff growth, Tessellations would like to go up to 100 to 85 people by adding an additional parking lot to the frontage area along Yorkshire Drive. And we want to go on record that it's always unacceptable to sacrifice Yorkshire Park to development. That area is much more to our community, and so basically we're just
Thank you.
fearful
That is your
that,
time.
Please finish up.
that too many parking spaces are going to be required, and concerned about the safety. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, Gil Doyle. Welcome, Gil.
Gil Doyle, Folkestone Drive. When CUSD leased Regner to Tessellations, let's call it T, both knew that there was insufficient parking at the site for T's current staff, never mind its future staff. Now, the city has told T that municipal code requires T to provide on-site parking for 148 staff, visitors, and vendors. T's 14 school vans are not figured in. The existing lot in front of the school has 47 parking spaces. T and the city agree that it's not practical or desirable to add another 101 spaces on campus. T has offered a solution. It will find another 20 spaces behind the school, bringing the total on site to 67. In addition, it will provide 81 spaces off-site. This solution still ignores the 14 school vans. The city has approved the plan. It's a good plan, provided there's shuttle service. Shuttle service for staff and visitors is an essential part of the plan because without a way to get to and from off-site parking, the 81 off-site spaces have actually not been delivered. The city may think it has a deal, off-site parking with shuttle service in exchange for its CUP, but right now, there is no shuttle service. T, in its project description, says that it will offer shuttle service, quote, in the future if necessary, unquote. So, what the city has actually agreed to is only the promise of off-site parking in the future if necessary. What it's actually getting right now is just 20 additional parking spaces behind the school, which is just 6 more than the 14 required for the school vans. T has finally pulled its cars off our streets, but in order to do so, has had to ask its staff to carpool, bike, and walk to work because there are just 46 usable spaces on campus for a staff of 70 now and 85 in future. This is a complex and fragile transportation solution that T has put together with the walking, the biking, etc. A rainy day or a glitch in the carpool system will likely result in staff bringing their cars back to Yorkshire. The neighborhood is expecting that a permit parking zone will be set up around the school. T has planned numerous large and small events during the year with up to 500 people in attendance. Some of these events will occur during school hours when the blacktop behind the school can't be used for parking. With permit parking around the school and no shuttle service for school events, where will all these cars park?
Hey, thank you. Next, Denise Menon, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the Planning Commission. My name's Denise Menon. I live on Yorkshire Drive, directly across the street from the former Regnar campus and the current Tessellations campus. Yorkshire Drive has been my home for 34 years. I'm very familiar with life up and down the street and on campus. In addition, I am currently a teacher in the Cupertino Union School District and worked at Regnar for 18 years. I raised my own children in this neighborhood and value the Yorkshire Drive park space, the blacktop play area, and the large field. These areas contribute to the quality of life in the area. Due to the large number of staff and vehicles at Tessellations, both permit parking and a shuttle service is necessary. As the school grows, the number of events, both large and small, will impact the neighborhood. The city of Cupertino can be a part of the solution because there is parking that can be rented to Tessellations on McClellan Road, the overflow from McClellan Ranch, and at the Blackberry Farm lot, not used regularly during the school year. Tessellations has 14 vans that can shuttle people to campus from these parking lots. As you consider the exception to the parking requirements, you should be aware that Tessellations has not addressed current safety and traffic violation issues near the north gate where the proposed parking lot will be. Parents are regularly parking in the fire lane, which is a no stopping at any time zone. Calling the sheriff's office has been of limited value because the illegally parked cars may be gone by the time the sheriff arrives. Tessellations should require parents to park in the main lot when they pick up their children from the after-school program. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. The next card doesn't have a name, but oh, there it is, sorry. Bindiyi Dekai. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong, but welcome.
That's Bindiya Desai.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate the Planning Division's recommendation to go forth with Tessellations parking exception permit, which is essentially based on neighborhood and community-oriented values. It is these values that make our neighborhoods and our cities livable. They are, number 1, public use of BA zone Regnard site. Number 2, preserving the open spaces we fondly call the Yorkshire Playground, which is the play fields and the courts, and the Yorkshire Park, the front lawn area. Number 3, using alternate systems to avoid vehicles on site and on our streets, keeping our neighborhood uncongested and peaceful. However, when I look at the AXE application proposal, I see that public use and open spaces have been compromised and alternate transport systems are far from adequate. The school is in session 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Monday to Friday, but posted signs display longer hours. This prevents public use of site longer than necessary. All of Yorkshire Playground will fill with vehicles at numerous events which occur on weekdays, weekends, and lasts up to 9 p.m. This prevents public from using any part of this open space. Yorkshire Playground is the heart of Regnart campus and neighborhood. It is a safe place to be with no vehicle or road in sight and a 360-degree view of mountains. It is used by all age groups from our community who come from as far as Stelling Road. Yorkshire Park, with its impressive row of trees and lawn, is a landmark, a photo spot in fall, right now, and a rest stop for one and all, birds, animals, and families, including our postal carrier. Planned school events must involve the use of these open spaces by Tessellation's families, not their vehicles. It is unacceptable to consider parking even temporarily in these two open spaces without robbing the neighborhood, the school campus itself, and the city at large of this most valuable resource. Viable shuttle options have been suggested by my neighbors. I hope Tessellations and Planning Division can partner to come up with a dependable system that works flawlessly. Please see more suggestions in email comments regarding expanding existing parking on site without significantly impacting open spaces and the neighborhood. Although not a topic for today, if current commute parking proposal is granted as is, it will become inevitable for neighbors to require the consideration of a 12-hour permit parking or a tow-away zone in due course. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Next is Carl Fong. Welcome, Carl.
Hello, I'm Carl Fong, full-time resident of Cupertino for 31 years. I live directly across the street from Tessellations. My address is 1169 Yorkshire Drive. As you have heard from our fellow neighbors regarding the facts and events leading to where we are today, in a consensus of opposing Tessellations' plan to alter aesthetic value of our property for high-density parking on school campus, causing potential degradation of real estate value, let me appeal to the committee why the community members in the former Regnart neighborhood is raising concerns that Tessellations' planned management of staff vehicles on-site and enrollment of expansion will potentially lead to impacting our community's quality of life as we have all enjoyed since setting our roots here. What sold my family and I to settle in Cupertino Foothills neighborhood, besides the highly acclaimed public education, was the natural amenities unique to this area, not exclusively limited to the serenity and the outdoor space. Our neighborhood welcomed Tessellations to our close-knit community in their providing enrichment and a quality education to those enrolled in their programs. But at what price do we as residents and our family have to sacrifice, give up on our dreams that we worked a lifetime to achieve, to accept how Tessellations have mistreated our community? We are aging demographics that plan to live here until God's calling. When Tessellations intend to expand the enrollment per their business plan, this will increase the density of moving vehicles in our area, cause traffic congestions, and influx of vehicles parking in our neighborhood streets, promoting a safety risk to us residents. Although Tessellations is promoting off-site parking and a shuttle service to their staff, is this in their long-term plan to sustain? Based on their proven behavior, Tessellations failed to act in resolving the vehicle density issue when neighbors raised this concern to their attention, notably non-compliant to the intent of Section 16 Good Neighbor Clause of their lease between Cupertino Union School District and Tessellations, and only initiated actions when neighbors rallied and filed with the City of Cupertino for a street parking permit, prompting the City of Cupertino to investigate the matter. Our intent is not to punish Tessellations, but to reclaim what we, as neighbors, living here for more than 3 decades, is rightfully ours to enjoy and cherish. Is this too much to ask? Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Carl. Next is Ravi Kumar. Welcome, Ravi.
Thanks, Stephen, Muni, and the other members of the commission. My comments are fairly short. I think most of my neighbors already mentioned a lot. My concerns are, one, around security. Now, when we used to have Regnart, it was a private school, and we used to have neighbors coming and dropping their children in the school. Now, with Tessellations, we have as the charts earlier mentioned, there are a lot of folks from out of the city coming into the city. And so security of the city and of our neighborhood is a big concern to me, especially at a time when I find crime around the neighborhood increasing and not decreasing. So that's one concern, is my security with strangers coming into the neighborhood. My second concern is around the traffic. Traffic congestion has increased in the neighborhood. Many of the folks who are working in that neighborhood find it difficult to get out of the neighborhood at 8 o'clock for meetings or come into the neighborhood at the right time in the evening. So traffic congestion is another big concern for me. And finally, I think parking, I think most of the neighbors mentioned about it eloquently. Parking next to our houses is a safety concern. We could, when we are backing out of the driveways, we could hit some of the children, and most of us in that neighborhood are elderly citizens, and we really don't want to have that challenge with us moving forward. So those are my three big concerns. We welcome tessellations to the neighborhood. At the same time, we want them to address these concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ravi. Next is Chris Ju, representing Cupertino Union School District. Welcome, Chris.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I won't take very much time, but I just want to thank again the Planning Commission for taking up this item. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Cupertino Union School District in support of approving the conditional use application. The school district feels that the values and the mission of tessellation schools are directly in alignment with our school district's values and goals. We believe tessellation school will contribute significantly to the current education landscape here in the city of Cupertino. Tessellation School's commitment to providing high education aligns, as I mentioned, to the school district's and our school board's decision to continue providing quality education to our district and our community in the face of declining enrollment and limited resources. The district made a very strategic decision to close Regnard School, and I think that is also too still in the feelings of a lot of people in our community, the closure of the school that has a cascading effect on the conversation we're having today. But the decision to close the schools was a difficult one, but it did allow our school district to look at realigning its resources to be able to continue to provide additional resources and things for programs. And I'll just want to finish up on the fact that throughout this entire process, the district had very many community meetings and opportunities to discuss the fact of closing schools, but then when the district went to the next step to surplus the property, we did convene a community a committee to go through the process of surplusing the property, looking at all of the various options that were available and things that the community would be comfortable to accept. So after all of that, those were then built into the recommendations to our school board to go through an RFP process. And I do want to say that Tessellations has jumped through all of the hoops that we had asked them to do. So we've gone through an entire process with them, and that is the decision that our school board made in making the recommendation to lease them the Regnard site. So I will conclude that, again, thank you for the commission for taking this item up, and the school district would like to support that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Next is Bill Kerr. Is Bill here? Welcome.
Thank you. I've been a resident in the house. I also live on Yorkshire for 56 years. There's been a lot of change in those years. Elimination of busing, the closure of some of the other elementary schools, now the closing of Regnard. I bring a little different perspective. I was an appraiser and worked for over 50 years, valuing properties, looking at the good points, the bad points, whether they're on arterials or whether they're on the interior part of neighborhoods that are supposed to be kept as neighborhoods, not to be the uses that has been accepted and leased by the school district to a educational group that has very good ideals, and I agree with all those, but very short-sighted in terms of parking and traffic. I agree with all the other individuals that have made comments. This neighborhood has changed, and we know it has. We would hope that the off-street or off-site shuttling will work and would be successful. I've watched from the first day. I live about a block away between Rainbow and the school, so I've, of course, been able to observe the pickup and drop-off congestion that occurs. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Next we have Lakshmi, can't read the last name, Lear. Welcome.
Thank you, Commission. My name is Lakshmi Iyer. As a parent volunteer, I'm here to offer testimony on the value that tessellations brings to our community. I have two boys. They are 11 years and 9 years old. They have experienced both public and private schools in the South Bay, but I can say with confidence that none met their needs as well as tessellations does. This is our first year at tessellations, and already we've witnessed a remarkable positive transformation in my boys. My older child has exceptional abilities in math and language, but in a traditional classroom setting, he struggled with boredom and frustration doing drills after drills on materials that were boring and uninspiring for him. And what made it worse was his poor executive functioning skills, as he found it difficult to schedule and manage his tasks. This led to a lot of frustration and tears. My younger child is also academically gifted, but he has challenges with fine motor skills, and that held him back from advancing at a pace of his cognitive abilities. This led to growing diffidence. After seeking remedies, I realized that the traditional settings are often not equipped to recognize or accommodate such gifted asynchronous learners. But in sharp contrast, tessellations is a gifted school. Tessellations philosophy is about embracing the whole child, both their strengths and weaknesses. Here, the staff has a profound understanding of asynchronous abilities. They provide the appropriate social, emotional accommodations to help the children overcome their challenges. With the low student-to-teacher ratio, my children get tailored support to address their unique needs. Now my older son works on 12th grade math, while my younger child works on 7th grade material. At the same time, they learn to be more organized and learn to regulate their emotions when faced with failures. Since coming to tessellations, my children have grown more confident and happier. Rather than feeling needless pressure and stress, the learning is now driven by passion and curiosity. But this is not just about my family. In our school, there are many children who are academically exceptional. Some, however, struggle with challenges like anxiety, hyperactivity, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, etc. Tessellations truly understands these kids. Tessellations has become their home now. I feel blessed to have this school in our community because this addresses the needs of a population that does not have any other real alternatives in the area. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. The last card I have is Tatiana Mejia. Welcome.
Thank you for hearing us today. My name is Tatiana Mejia. My son is turning 14 on Friday. We have been at tessellations for 4 years. Alejandro is happy, confident, kind. He's good friends. He feels he belongs. He enjoys learning. He likes his teachers. He doesn't have a phone. He helps with chores. He's a good kid, and I don't take any of this for granted. Before coming to Tessellations, Alejandro attended 3 elementary schools. We started at our local public school. By 1st grade, he was struggling with reading and writing. He got frustrated in class, and I know he was quite a handful. At times, he mastered the material quickly and then got bored and distracted the other kids. Something had to change, but there were no clear answers. There was no diagnosis, no way for me to request an individualized learning plan from the district, just a series of tests and evaluations. We tried private school. We tried 2 private schools in rapid succession, and the results were more of the same. Alejandro was demotivated, lonely, and the truth was that so was I. I didn't know what to say when he asked me what was wrong with him. I was at my wit's end, and then came Tessellations. The teachers understand asynchronous learners like Alejandro. They have training, time, and support to bring out the best in these kids, in my kid. Alejandro's getting ready for high school. He has dreams. He's become active in speech and debate, and he wants to be a foreign service officer. We've come a long way from saying that reading is stupid, and that's why he's not doing it. He has learned a lot about himself. He has learned to love himself, and he has learned how to learn. Tessellations has become our community, and I don't know what we would do if it wasn't here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam City Clerk, did any more cards come in, or can we move to
No more blue speaker cards.
Zoom participants? Okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 people on Zoom that wish to speak. First is San R. Welcome.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I hope that you will consider the effect on the neighborhood here. I have no doubt that Tessellation is a wonderful school, and I have no doubt that every student of Tessellation is special, and Tessellation is doing a noble service in serving the community of students. However, the neighborhood of Cupertino is not to be sacrificed for accommodating a population largely coming from out of Cupertino. And especially the Bub Road is a major traffic clog jam due to multiple schools, Lincoln Elementary, Kennedy Middle, Monta Vista High, Faria Elementary. All of these schools feed into that one corridor of Bub and McClellan. I'm further alarmed that the residents near the school are suggesting diverting this traffic jam to McClellan. We have communities around McClellan and west of Cupertino, west of Foothill, that use McClellan to commute towards these schools. And so please do not shift the problem elsewhere. Please shift the problem out of Cupertino. This is a problem of CUSD's making, and I'm appalled that Chris Ju and the CUSD administration has the gall to come here and recommend enthusiastically to support this project. A number of times, the public requested CUSD to work with the city of Cupertino to conduct traffic studies. No traffic study was commissioned. No collaboration was done with the city of Cupertino. Regnart was shut down by diverting enrollments. And now a problem that CUSD has created, they want to come to the city of Cupertino and recommend enthusiastically that this be approved. This is shameful. This is absolutely shameful. I urge the Planning Commission to deny the use permit and to kindly divert this problem out of the neighborhood. Parking cannot be allowed in this neighborhood or in McClellan. Please do not shift the problem to McClellan. We don't want to inherit a parking problem in an already congested street that is the main conduit for West Cupertino, as parents need to drop off kids to Monta Vista, Lincoln Elementary, Kennedy Middle, Faria Elementary, and perhaps to other parts of Cupertino as they head east. The McClellan corridor is not to be messed with, and kindly send this problem back to CUSD, deny the use permit, and have them use the property for a small capacity school that will be a good fit in the neighborhood and is not going to bring in over 95% of the population from outside the city. Thank you for making a wise decision here. And also, please kindly separate the agenda item. There is no need to combine these agenda items. It looks like the zoning change is being done for these BA zone properties. We have got other situations where there's a use of public-private sharing of properties. Please do not combine these agenda items. Please separate them and vote separately.
Okay, thank you, San. Next is Geetha Mohan. Welcome. Geetha, are you there? Okay, well, we can come back if Geetha reappears. Next is Mani Ramaswamy. Welcome, Mani.
Thank you, Commission, for letting me speak on this matter. So I'm a 20-year neighbor, resident of Cupertino. I live on Rainbow Drive, between Stelling and De Anza. And in the last few months, the traffic backs up, at the junction of Rainbow and Stelling, and, the traffic backs up all the way literally to my house. I still have a child that goes to Monte Vista. It has added significant time to my commute every morning, like 10 minutes that I don't have. I'm sure there's a compounding effect for other people who live in this side of Stelling Road who have to pass through the junction. I think the previous speaker who talked about not propagating that problem down to McLaren is should be heard clear. That's fraught with danger to take to use that McClellan place as like a satellite zone for students to be shuttled. I shudder to think what would happen to that area when hundreds of cars descend there to drop kids off in a short span of time, right? So the problem is clearly traffic. I'm seeing it firsthand. I was made aware of of the goings on with tessellation. I think clearly the problem between Regnat and tessellations is that Regnat was built as predominantly I'm guessing a 60% walk to school, 40% drive to school. And I think right now those numbers are, grossly, reversed. Maybe even 99%, drive to school. So, I think the what's foremost on the minds of community members like myself is to preserve the relative peace and, the quality of life that we sought when we, moved into this neighborhood, and that's at risk. And I echo the other gentleman's thought. I cannot describe CUSD better than a Trojan horse, right? For CUSD, I think they need to be rehabilitated. They're underserving the population, right? And for CUSD to sell out Regnat, and now and really no offense to tessellations, I'm sure they're doing a wonderful job, but to make the a fervent emotional appeal to this community and allow us and allow this unfettered growth of traffic is just, I think, unpalatable for all of us. I'll stop there, and I hope the city will use its infinite wisdom in making the right decision.
Okay, thank you, Mani. Let's try Geetha again. Geetha, are you there? Okay, not there. Let's move on to Ajit Dasar. Oh, wait, here's Geetha.
Okay. So I just wanted to thank you so much for letting me speak here. I just wanted to echo the thoughts of the last two people that were on the phone, as well as a few others. I also think that CUSD coming and recommending this is pretty shameful and seems to be like a hidden agenda there. So if anybody, the Planning Commission wants to recommend this, I also would suggest that, please check with the neighbors. We do not want traffic in the neighborhood. We cannot sacrifice the whole neighborhood for the school. And already the last two people spoke really well and laid out their thinking already. but the school is built for people who live in the community. Something is really wrong when this change was done. We can go back and fix that, I guess, but we cannot allow for traffic in the neighborhood and the neighborhood to be sacrificed and the neighbors not being able to use the park and things like that. So please, do not make this wrong decision to allow tessellation to grow here. I'm not sure whether, I'm sure the parents that were speaking for their kids, they have every right to do so, but this was not the forum. The curriculum of the school and what it does for the kids is not on the agenda. The school, I'm sure, is a good one, but it doesn't belong in a neighborhood and it cannot, you're letting us get boxed in. We are not able to get to work on time. We're not able to come back home. This is not the Cupertino where we are paying all these property taxes. So, please, make a mindful decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Geetha. Next is Ajith Dasari. Welcome, Ajith.
Hello, Planning Commission. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to express my concerns with this conditional use permit. I think all my fellow neighbors expressed the safety and traffic concerns, but one thing I also want to reiterate is I'm really disappointed at the Cupertino Union School District for coming to this meeting and recommending. Tessellations is not like it has not been in this neighborhood for like 10 years or 20 years. They very well knew what their expansion plans would be and what the limitations of the Regnot high school, elementary school site would bring in terms of parking, traffic, and all those things. But CUSD, I think, deliberately thought that they could come up and plan this expansion through the system or push it through the system and causing a big issue for our neighbors. I live on Rainbow Drive and I have been living there for 25 years. My kids went to Regnot and all the cool, free Monte Vista and Kennedy. The biggest issue you see today, it takes me about 5 minutes to get out of my driveway in the morning when I have to get to work. So it was never an issue when we had Regnot for so many years, primarily because Regnot, a lot of kids, used to come, walk or bike and stuff like that. So the car traffic was very little. That's number one. And number two, what I have seen is these parents are 95% of the school strength coming into tessellations. I see people parking between Weymouth Drive and Rainbow. That's where parking is allowed on Rainbow Drive, and trying to get out and walk the kids to school. And that is a huge safety risk because there are bikers there, kids biking, Monte Vista High School kids biking at the time, and the Kennedy Kids School, and there is no separate bike lane on Rainbow Drive. It is a huge safety concern. I really urge the Planning Commission to decline the conditional use permit, and I hope CUSD does not bring this kind of thing. Because tessellations and CUSD knew the limitations, they should be sticking to whatever it is, the limited strength. And I do appreciate the educational goals of the institution itself. But we cannot sacrifice the safety and the complete traffic nuisance that is being created, and also directing traffic to Rainbow Drive. I've seen tessellations recommending parents to use Rainbow Drive. Directing traffic to Rainbow Drive is almost like squeezing a balloon between McClellan and Rainbow Drive. You're pushing the problem to the other end rather than resolving the problem. So please do decline the conditional use permit.
Okay, thank you,
very
Ajith. Next, we have initials VS. Welcome. And you'll have to unmute. Oh, there you go.
Hi, thank you, Commission, for letting me speak. I have a comment.
Go ahead. Please speak up.
Hi. I disagree with the giving them use permit, as the previous speakers have mentioned. The tesselation in their report said that there is no effect on the traffic, and they're recommending the parents to use Rainbow Drive, which is the traffic part that's not correct. It takes, I would say, 15 cars pass by before we could even enter Rainbow. And right after the school, the traffic is not that bad. So it all started once the session school came. So the traffic on Rainbow, which the previous speaker said is no separate lanes for bikes, it's getting so scary for the students who are riding their bikes. And for the cars, it's adding 10, 15 minutes. So saying that there's a minimal effect on the traffic. The school, it says are self-nonprofit, but I looked through the site, looks like it costs to send one kid, and not every family has access to spend that money. It also mentioned it has only 5% of Cupertino family at school. Most of them, the map that they showed during the conference, the families are coming from all over the Bay. My question is, when you know the site doesn't have parking, doesn't have the capacity to meet your dream of expansion, then why not go elsewhere, like where there is a bigger site, where there's no problem of this parking meeting the legal requirement or creating a nuisance in the neighborhood? I agree with the other speakers before me that your ways of teaching might be perfect, but then your ways of entering the neighborhood is far from perfect. The way they have entered this neighborhood is not appreciated. It's causing a nuisance in terms of traffic, in terms of their projection, which they say they would have 300 students. It's just going to get worse. So I would urge the commission to deny. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Jennifer Sheeran. Welcome, Jennifer.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. I'm speaking on behalf of myself tonight. I'm a resident of Cupertino and a longtime member of the church that's next door to New Life Church, where the proposed alternative parking for the 81 cars will be. I ask tonight that you do not approve the parking exception portion. I'm not sure that any commissioners reviewed this planned extra parking lot at New Life, so I hope that you especially consider my input about this plan. There's several reasons that I asked to reject this parking plan. As a previous speaker said, this is a significant amount of increased traffic to add on in McClellan each day, a road that already has backups through the tri-school area all the way to De Anza. It's not acceptable for a private school to make it more difficult for our city's children to get to school. Per Mr. Stant, only 5% of tessellation students are from Cupertino. McClellan consistently has a problem with traffic. Let's not make that worse. Second, this is a significant amount of traffic pollution to add to a church facility. On the St. Jude's campus, which is attached to New Life, you can see it in the picture from the staff, there are Live Oak adult daycare there, as well as the FUHSD Links post-secondary school to work program. They're there each day. Adding this amount of daily traffic will impact the health and well-being of these vulnerable seniors and students through additional local air pollution. The shuttle buses traveling to Regnart morning and afternoon would likely exceed the 8,500-pound EPA threshold, so therefore would not even need to meet regular car air quality standards. Third, the proposed alternative parking lot is at a church, not a parking area designed for this activity. The neighbors surrounding it chose to live near a church, not a park and go facility. It's not reasonable to use it this way. 81 cars is a significant number of cars each day, pretty much the entire parking lot of the church. I agree with other speakers that a different site for this parking would be much better. For the sake of our Cupertino children, families, and our environment, I ask that you do not approve the plan to have the additional parking at New Life Church to address the parking exception. Thank you for considering my input.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Next is Li Zhang. Welcome, Li.
Hello, everyone. My name is Li Zhang. My 5-year-old son just started kindergarten at Tessellation this August. Even our family lives in Campbell, so I'm here to provide a little bit perspective as one of the 95% families at Tessellation who attend from outside of Cupertino. When we first moved to Campbell, right before my son was born, we actually specifically picked a place walking distance to our local public school. And also we live right across from a local private school with the hope we can walk our son to schools and he can walk or bike to school once he's older on his own. As he grows, we got to know him a little more and came to realize he can learn abstractions faster. He's fascinated by math and can get easily bored if he is not challenged or engaged properly. And he will start talking, walking around, and then distracting other kids and the teachers at the same class. So while we absolutely loved and still love the idea of no commute local schools, we don't want our child to think that school is boring. So we started our journey to look for school that will best fit my son's personality and educational needs. We toured schools from all the way from Sunnyvale to Los Gatos, and we just felt really lucky that we were able to join Tessellation when it expanded its campus and moving into the current Yorkshire location. I think, as the other parents has mentioned, the Tessellation has the expertise program and the specially trained teachers to not only satisfy our children's needs but also equip them with strong appreciation of nature and powerful social emotional skills. As a family who live right by a school, I understand the inconvenience and totally feel the pain of school traffic. But on the other hand, I'm actually really proud to be part of a safe and close neighborhood and a beloved community with outstanding schools where kids laugh, learn, play, and grow. For both my home in Campbell and our new home at Tessellations. Even we don't live in Cupertino, as our precious kids spend most of their time in Cupertino, we absolutely share the same desire to keep the streets safe for every single car and every single kid who is biking or walking by. We're not just attending a school in Cupertino. We eat in Cupertino more, we shop in Cupertino more. We get to know more families in Cupertino. We hired a local driver for my son from Tessellation. He has shared with us he sent his children to William Regnard before the school was closed. Now, 30 years later, he's helping us to pick up our kids from Tessellations. This brings him sweet memory of his own children growing up and will become our family's treasured memory of where our kids
Okay,
grew up.
thank you. You're out of time. Next, we have Babu Srinivasan. Welcome.
This is Babu Srinivasan living in Rainbow Drive. And I think this agenda is not how Tessellation is teaching or how Tessellation's quality is. The agenda for this meeting or this issue is, do we approve parking permit? That is in Cupertino. And this is for Cupertino municipality. And this is for the residents of Cupertino who pay tax there, who live here. And Cupertino Union School District needs a proof to admit a kid in Cupertino even before making the process. So I believe everyone is on the same page. The traffic in the morning has become a nightmare for many Rainbow, Sterling, Yorkshire, and Bubb people. At times I am ashamed of myself not to let the residents get out of their homes safely and easily in the morning. I'm not joking. I'm really serious because I'm dropping 2 kids, one in Lincoln, one in Monta Vista. The children who are residents of Cupertino are getting shuttled between Lincoln, Blue Hills, and rest with siblings in Monta Vista. Is it necessary to displace the native of this community and bring in new development? We do not question the distinct nature of Tessellation. Is it mandatory to be located in Cupertino? There is already a Paria Elementary Lottery School, which is nearby Dienza, less than a mile away, which already brings in people from all across the Bay Area. Is it necessary to locate it in the middle of Cupertino for small number of kids in Tessellation, maybe 100, 150 and throwing out 400 plus kids who are part of Regnat. If people are coming to Tessellation all the way to Cupertino, they can go additional mile or two to Los Altos or San Jose, or even the John Muir Elementary, which is another mile away. And worst case, in Cupertino municipality building itself, they can have an extension to run their school. Nearby there is a library. They can find a parking lot and they can rent it out and they can do whatever they want. The municipality planning to operate a shuttle for public school if that helps Tessellation manage the transportation issue so that the entire community will be happy and we can drop our kids from the steps of the house itself. And is this meeting info shared with every resident? Are they aware or is it just who get to know? I wish not to say, but had to mention the Planning Commission better to spend in the welfare of the residents of Cupertino. Is it possible Tessellation to continue call Cupertino their home like they did in the remote during the lockdown and operate outside wherever they want, anywhere in US, not even inside California, if not Wyoming? There was a mention that they were stealing our some kids from Monta Vista around 9K. The numbers that is presentation were totally horribly wrong. I feel it is best of time for everyone to discuss about this, reject it straight away in the interest of Cupertino. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Babu. Next is Mag L. Welcome. Yeah, go ahead, Mag L. Okay, we'll come back to you in a moment. Now, Michelle Dunn, welcome.
Hi, my name is Michelle Dunn. I'm a Cupertino resident, not in the Regnart neighborhood, but still very interested because my son is going to go to Monta Vista High School eventually. But in terms of the conditional use permit for allowing parking, I kind of wonder why a traffic and parking study was not performed for this, because even though it's an existing school and the use is the same, the number of staff is double the previous use. And it used to be a neighborhood school and now it's an entirely commuter school. So even though it's the same use, these two large things make it almost like an entirely different type of use, type of school. So I kind of wonder why there isn't a traffic or parking study done for this. And also wonder I wonder if there's any CEQA that needed to be done, because this is, even though it's the same use, there's a lot of things that make it a very large, significant impact for traffic and parking, and all the things that go along with that, but maybe not an entire huge thing for that. But I recommend, or I request that the Planning Commission take into consideration that a traffic study and parking study needs to be complete before any actual action is done or taken into full consideration. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Let's try Mag L again. Are you there? Okay. Mag L, are you there? You're unmuted. Okay, we will move on to Miroslava Preza. Welcome.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk. First off, I want to say that I value Tesselations and what they're bringing to the community and the serving of the students. However, let's not deviate of the point. Here we are trying to talk about the parking permit exception. And I think that one of the things we have to keep in mind is the traffic. Every morning and at pickup time, the traffic in Bob Road and McClellan is insane. And I say this because I have to go and drop off my kids there and pick them up every single day. And I have seen that this year has gone way, way worse. The other schools in the area usually coordinate the entry times and pickup times to not have it at the same moment. But Desolation actually has exactly the same time as Kennedy Middle School, which has around like 950 students. This, even if it is a small community that they are serving right now, 180 students, they're saying they're gonna grow to 300. The case is that their percentage is skewed because Regnar used to be a community school. Everyone used to be able to walk or bike, and in their case now, they have to drop off their kid, most of them. So that brings a lot of traffic to the area. And it's so funny to me to hear that actually there is someone from CUSD saying that they support for this permit when they were trying to close Regnar. One of the points that they were bringing out was actually the traffic that it was between Regnar and Lincoln. Anyway, that's not the point here. But one of the things is like they're talking about the solution about some shuttles from Macmillan to Tessellations that they're mentioning in the future. It's not here, and they are not doing it right now. They cannot shift the responsibility and their growth when they're saying that they're planning to actually bring more people in the future from pre-K to 9th grade. So it's gonna be even worse than what it is right now. They cannot shift the responsibility to us, and their growth cannot be done at the detriment of our own community. So that's why I'm saying that please, please deny this parking permit exception. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's try Mag-L one more time. Mag-L, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we asked to disapprove this request. We live a block away from the 3 existing schools with the restricted right turn signal on Cross Street for all directions on Bob and McClellan. The traffic has been extremely tight and dangerous, especially during the rush hour when nobody wants to be late for school. And you can see a lot of parents and kids, they are actually either walking or riding the scooter and bike. The danger on the streets and elders are extremely dangerous. Remember a few years ago, a high school student got hit by a truck and died, and the kid is the only child for that family. Remember, there's also recently a car accident in front of Kennedy, flipped over with a slow traffic. And how could this happen at the rush hour? And then with so many people walking and it still flipped over. What kind of speed, what kind of situation, what kind of danger was presented there? And along the years, we've been seeing cars accidentally going onto the pavement on the street on McClellan and Bob Road. And then you can see many kids and parents are actually walking by. And then imagine more with existing public school buses and all the private buses and shuttles. And then also with the future, the T schools, a van, shuttle on the street, how tight it's going to be. And then we have friends spent $3 million just recently to move in this neighborhood. And however, there are people coming, 95% of people from that school is coming from other neighborhood, and the school is expanding. Coming from other neighborhood and consume the resources of Cupertino environment, and we are the resident paying the price. And they can leave by the evening, by night. And then we have to pick up the cost and danger threatening to our children's life. And then so let's think about life. This is about parking and life. Rather than life is more important before you should have life before you have those extra details. Maybe this school, if so many people want to come into that school so much, maybe the school needs to be relocated to somewhere else, maybe in San Jose, but not in this area, specific spot. Please kindly consider. And then we hope, we pray this decision can be made wisely, because this is a decision of life, about danger, about body safety of the children. in the neighborhood. And thank you so much for the wise decision. And then that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mag. Next, we have Chris Gerlach. That's the last hand I have raised. If anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand before Chris finishes speaking. Welcome, Chris.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hello, I was a former educator at Tessellation School. I was a math specialist for 2 years. And while I wasn't planning on speaking, I felt like it was really important that I bring up some points. One was the importance of education that is brought by Tessellation School. Seeing hundreds of applications per homeroom and thousands of applications total, and seeing these applications rise year to year showcases the importance of Tessellation School as being quintessential to the gifted student community. We would see that closure of the school would lead to a loss of education for this community, which is not typically represented by many other schools, as well as the loss of jobs for many, many educators. These students, I can say firsthand, are wonderful, bright, passionate, and the school emphasizes care and empathy and kindness for the surrounding community and nature in general, as seen by the mission statement and the education that's provided. The educators are as well wonderful, bright, and passionate people. I myself have been an educator from the elementary, high school, and collegiate level. And I can say that in particular, teaching at Tessellations, the students have found a home. Tessellations is a home for gifted students. With regards to the parking situation, it's extremely unfortunate to hear many people argue the safety of the students and traffic issues. It's been seen that there's a long-term plan to have separate campuses, as well as long-term plans for increased proposed parking, shuttle services, and current carpooling that is happening. Tessellations has made significant progress so far, especially with the carpooling services, and the promise of cooperation with the city to provide transportation has been seen by the cooperation of the staff to ensure better relationships with the residents, is evidence of this, of helping ease the parking and traffic situation. As well as the fact that there have been no major previous parking issues on the McClellan campus, and the fact that that the nature of school events is naturally spread out, and so parking needs would not be a major issue at any given point throughout the day, showcases that this issue would decrease over time. Lastly, with regards to the location of the campus, many of the arguments that have been brought forth with regards to closing the school could be applied to any school. The idea of applying what I would consider a logical fallacy of the dangers and tragedies to the students could be applied to any school, and thus we would have to consider moving every school out of every residential neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. You're out of time.
Thank you.
So I wanted to explain here what we are supposed to do here according to Rosenberg's rules is that we present the resolutions. We don't approve them, we don't adopt them, but before the commission discusses them, we have the resolutions read, and then we bring it back to discussion. It doesn't mean that we're approving them by the resolution being presented. So we are ready, and I'm unsure why maybe the planning department can explain why the specific resolutions for tessellations are combined with a more general resolution that would cover all properties like this. Luke Pugh? You can.
No, unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that, for your question.
Okay, but City Attorney Wu, we can vote on each of these individually, right? So they are not necessarily all linked together.
Yeah, for this item,
the commission is making recommendations to the council.
Right, we're not-
And that you
yeah.
have different recommendations, you can have the record reflect that, and of course, the basis for your recommendation.
Okay, very good. All right, so we will start with the first draft resolution. Let me open it here. This is a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Cupertino recommending approval of amendments to Cupertino Municipal Code, Chapter 19.76, to allow privately operated educational uses and privately operated public serving uses in the BA zoning district. This is not quite accurate. It says determine that the project as proposed, but this is not a specific project. Is that true? And the first one, which has no number.
Chair Scharf, if you might ask the question again. We're
Okay,
not
I mean,
quite
it
sure
says
what-
determine the project as proposed is categorically exempt from CEQA, but this first one is not specifically for tessellations. Is that true?
That is correct. So the use itself, the municipal code amendment, it addresses private school uses and other private uses that are public serving on BA
Okay.
zoned properties. But that in of itself is also part of a CEQA determination. And staff's recommendation is that also be considered exempt.
Okay, it just, this says the project, but it's not a specific project. It would be for any future.
Correct. It's the municipal code amendment
okay.
itself is the project for purposes
Oh,
of
okay,
this.
okay.
Right, if I wanted to chime in on the CEQA exemption is covering both this project and the permits as well as the code change, which would apply to the other BA zone properties. So the Class 1 exemption is covering a specific project and also a code change that would affect, I think, 24 properties for the BA zone. So sorry I misunderstood on the resolution. I think the difference is having a code change applies to every BA zone in the city.
Right.
Whereas the parking exception and the use permit applies solely to this site. The CEQA exemption covers everything. If that makes it clearer.
Okay, but how can we know that all of those sites would be exempt from CEQA?
Because they're all existing facilities. So the CEQA exemption, the 15301 Class 1 exemption applies to existing facilities where you have similar uses occurring with no expansion of that use. So this code is the code change applies to text, which would not allow any development or expansion of use on any of those sites. And if the code change were adopted, it would make any private use conditional, which would have to come back before the Planning Commission for approval and would also be subject to CEQA at that time. So right now, we're only really doing the code change because it's necessary for this project, but it would apply to any future project on any of those similarly zoned properties.
But future projects would still need to come back to Planning Commission and City Council.
Correct. You are not, the only thing being entitled for use is the tessellation site. The code change applies citywide, but there is nothing else proposed on any of those BA zone properties.
Right, because, well, the Regnar property, when it was donated, I believe it can only be used for educational facilities, but that is probably not the case for other CUSD or FUHSD properties, which could be proposed for different uses.
Yeah, but the text change limits them to the conditional use permit for private educational facilities. It's not
Okay.
expanding beyond that. I wouldn't know if there's anything tied to those specific properties, but the BA zones are largely all public schools or similarly public-owned sites, which is one of the issues with clarifying the code, that the code, the way it currently reads, is pretty much tied to ownership of the site, which this is still owned by a public entity, but the operation would be a private one on a publicly owned site. All of the BA zone sites, they're not privately owned. That's why they're zoned that way.
Okay, very good. All right, so let's bring it back for discussion by the Commission. Tajesh, you have anything?
In regards to this first part, first draft of the
Your
resolution.
microphone's off.
Oh, no, it's on.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay, bring it closer.
In regards to the first draft resolution, no questions.
Okay, Mooney.
As long as we're only specifically talking about the first draft resolution.
Right.
So is that because I have tons of questions for
No,
the
so
staff,
let's leave that afterwards.
and that's for relating to the conditional use and all that. So that's for later, right?
Yes.
So this is just on the draft. With all the clarifications between the staff and you, I think I'm good. Yeah, no questions.
Okay, David.
Again, it's unusual here that we haven't had comment back from the applicant, an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant and to comment, but.
Well, we will when we get to that specific resolution. This does not apply solely to tessellations. The next one, the conditional use permit and the parking applies directly, but you're free to ask questions to them if you wish.
Yeah, but I think that everybody has questions. So the thing is, we've taken comment, but we haven't asked questions to clarify that. I think this is general rather than specific to the code amendment.
Okay.
I would say just perhaps we should do that. I mean.
Okay.
I don't agree. I mean, we should do these one by one. Otherwise, this is going to go on for 2-3 hours and we're not going to get anywhere.
Right. I mean, my idea if we discuss this, which is not specific to tessellations, I don't know if questions to tessellations would be helpful at this time, but you're certainly free to ask them.
Well, but then we would never ask. We would never have an opportunity to ask. To have the discussion around.
No, we will.
No, we will on the next resolution. Yeah.
You're talking about tessellations, but I'm talking about what we're talking. About this particular motion.
But this doesn't directly relate solely to that applicant, does it?
So I have some questions. Maybe let me ask some staff questions.
Okay,
that are related to this. I'm curious. I'm curious if you can speak about. So we have an issue here that's. Well, I'm not trying to well. So one element of this application is that there is a non-compliant. There's a regulation for how much parking should be provided. I'm curious about who the regulator is for that. Is whether it's the DSA, the state agency, or whether it's the city. I wonder if you could speak to that. Now, maybe that's
not relevant to this resolution.
Right. That'll be the next.
That's
resolution.
the next resolution. So do you have any questions on this resolution?
I guess not.
Okay. So then I
Okay,
suggest
Seema.
let's keep. I don't have any questions on this resolution.
Okay. Should somebody want to make a motion for this one then, and we can vote on it? So this is, right, we're not adopting it. This is our recommendation to the city council. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
David,
why don't you do it?
Let's see. Let me get this thing up here.
Shall I do it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council determine that the project as proposed is categorically exempt from, do I need to read the whole thing? Okay, and that the City Council adopt the proposed amendment to the municipal code as indicated in Exhibit A.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, please vote with your lights.
The motion carries unanimously.
Looks like you got it. It shows up there.
Okay, now we are on to resolution number 2023-XX. It doesn't have a number yet. This is a resolution, the City Council of the City of Cupertino approving a conditional use permit U 2023-002 to allow for the use of a former public school site for a private educational facility located at 1170 Yorkshire Drive. Okay, let's, Tejesh.
In regards to the conditional use permit, no questions.
Mooney.
So this is where I think, we can ask the staff and
the applicant.
right? So, yeah, no, I do have, quite a few comments and questions as well, so I'll go through them. Do you have a time limit?
No, go.
Okay. So, first of all, I would like to thank the staff, to arrange the agenda in this order, because it gives, the topics that are more important to the community, give them an opportunity to talk instead of them waiting till, end, right? So thank you for arranging it in this order. So hopefully, we continue to do that in future as well. I want to thank Tessellations for creating a school to meet the needs of kids that are underserved, right? That's something that I learned today. So that's, great service. Thank you for doing that. And also, I'd like to thank Tessellations for working with the community to get the school going in Cupertino since 2020. So good job. I also see, public is generally in supportive of the school, but their concern seems to be, around traffic and safety, right? Parking, traffic, and safety. Those are the three big items that stood out. I also like the fact that, this is still being kept as a school instead of, some other use. So I would like to thank, CUSD for making sure school stays as a school in case, if you need it back in future to support our city growth, right? So if it has been lost to some other use, then that would be very difficult, right? So I know what it is like, not being able to back into the street, because I live on a street, that's heavily trafficked. That's McClellan. In fact, to come to this meeting, I couldn't back into the street, to come in this direction. So I went in the Monte Vista direction and took, turn and came back here.
Sorry, just a quick question. Are we talking about parking and traffic now or in the next resolution?
Yeah,
because it seems like it's more relevant.
Right,
in
parking is the next resolution. We're talking about the conditional use
Yes,
permit, although it is related.
Just the school, but then it has, parking limitation, right?
Right.
Well, traffic and parking seem to be in the next resolution.
In the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's just conditional use, from public school to private school without worrying about, the other factors. Then I'll wait until that one. Thank you.
Okay, David.
I guess if we're doing it this way, then I will pass on this one as well.
I have no questions.
Okay, well, I have a few things on this one. First of all, we need to look at what is in the best interest of the residents of Cupertino. This is not a question on whether or not Tessellations is a good school or not. I think we pretty much all agree that what they're doing, is a net positive for the students they serve. I don't think anyone is proposing that the school be closed. We're deciding whether or not to recommend the granting of a conditional use permit for this specific location. It also should be clear that they opened the school in violation of the law because they didn't have a conditional use permit. They should have not opened it before they had a conditional use permit. I don't know how this occurred, if CUSD or the city of Cupertino or someone didn't make it clear that they needed a conditional use permit to operate a private school there. But we should be treating this application as if the school is applying for the use permit for an empty campus, with the lease from CUSD being executed only if the conditional use permit is approved by the city. I don't know what the Planning Commission would have done if they had come for the conditional use permit before they opened the school. I don't know if they, opened the school without it, thinking that it'd be easier to get it after the fact. I just don't know what was going through everyone's head there. I do see some of the statements in the draft resolution that say, that I don't agree with. It says the proposed use would not be detrimental and injurious to the property in the vicinity or the public health, safety, or welfare, but I think it is all of those. It is detrimental. And the applicant has not met the burden of proof to support the application.
Can I make a comment?
Sure, of course.
So looking just narrowly at this resolution without discussing the parking and the traffic, because I was making a list of all the issues that people were bringing up, very valid questions, but it was traffic on Bub, traffic on McClellan, traffic on Rainbow, and parking on Yorkshire. I think were kind of the four big ones.
But out of scope for this.
I know.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I'm coming back to that. So none of those really apply to this, is I guess my point. So if we're looking at what is the best use of this campus, if it's not a public school, I would be hard pressed to think of a better use than another school, especially one that serves such an important purpose. So from my perspective on this resolution, they are not, it's very comparable. I think CUSD's done a pretty good job in finding an educational facility that is fairly comparable in size, in terms of 300 students versus 509, I think it was, at Regnart. So in terms of the size of the student population, yes, the staff population is bigger, but from what I understand, they are working really hard and jumping through hoops and bending over backwards to try and be a good neighbor. And I think we can all agree on that they're all trying to be good neighbors. Whatever remaining issues are there, so looking strictly at the scope of this resolution, I think they do meet the burden of proof. I think it's an excellent use of the space. I think any of the issues that we are going to be talking about are not really related to this particular resolution.
So I agree with Seema, but I do have one comment regarding use without permit, right? But this is not the first time I'm seeing it. I've seen a couple of other occasions, the alcohol use permit in the gas station, and there's one another incident where they were, I think the cemetery, right? They violated, so then they came back and asked for approval later on. We need to do something about it, right? Because we want to make sure that these things get approved before being put to use. I don't know where the gap is, but this is the third time that I'm seeing it.
So just as a process suggestion, Chair, it looks like we're getting into sort of discussion and deliberation. So I recommend perhaps you allow the applicant, if they want to respond to any of the public comments, they're entitled to 2 minutes. And then if this body has questions to ask, you should ask those questions, and then we can close the public hearing and you can have deliberation.
Okay, very good. Would the applicant like to speak and reply to any of the public comments?
I don't think I can possibly answer all of them in 2 minutes. Do you want me to answer comments regarding this second resolution or all public comments? Because I think I agree with
yeah, we're not
Commissioners-
talking about the parking exception right now.
Yeah.
That'll be the next.
Okay,
now
so I
we're
wanna
talking, should we grant the conditional use permit?
Right, okay, so far from the commission and actually from even the residents, I don't think I heard objections to the conditional use permit as much as to parking. We are a much smaller school than Regnart was when it was in full operation. So obviously we're bigger than it was last year because it was empty. So memories might be a little bit short, but we certainly impact the neighborhood less than when Regnart was in full swing. I want to address your concern about operating without a permit. I didn't put it in our presentation, but Commissioner Seema actually asked me about this today, and I furnished to her a list of the comms chain that we went through. we were very proactive and operated in good faith the whole way along, and we kept asking if we needed a permit. And we did receive conflicting information along the way. I don't think there was anything malicious happening on anybody's part, but as absolutely soon as we were informed by planning that we actually do need a permit, we went into overdrive and got that permit in probably in record time. And I think the Planning Commission, the staff also acted in record time, if I understand correctly. But I hope that the staff can back us up here in that we jumped through all the hoops as soon as we were told we need to. And I actually have that chain of communications in writing, in duplicate, if the commissioners would like to see it. I think it's pretty revealing that we were proactive and acting in good faith. So we certainly weren't taking the attitude, let's just ask for forgiveness later. That's not how we work. That said, we also fully recognize that we are now out of compliance. So we have no pretense that is not true. So I'm not arguing that.
Can you comment when that was that the
Yeah,
issue
can I just give you the
planning
docs
department-
because
I don't think you're on a timer here.
No, go ahead. You can take some time. I mean, can you just summarize them for the public that's watching?
Projector. On the projector so that public can see.
How do I do that?
It's old school. Okay.
Is this the right place?
Yep.
Yeah, go.
Okay.
Perfect.
So I think going through this line by line is probably not super helpful, but this actually goes back until March of '22 when we were at our old campus.
Bend the microphone.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, of course. My apologies. So we were communicating with Emmy way back then, and this was actually about getting a use permit for our old site, because we were also out of compliance there unknowingly, since there were schools there before us. And I think that was just basically ignorance on our part and the church's part. But then if you scan down to page 2, there, let's see. In page 2, we're detailing, letting the Planning Commission know that we were seriously looking into moving into the Regnart space, and do we actually need a permit? And we were not given a straight answer. And again, I think that's because Emmy, part of the thing that was discussed today with the first motion is that this seems to be not contemplated by the code, right? And so, again, I don't think this is malicious on anybody's part, but rather that no one was exactly sure of the answer. We finally received notice that we should get a permit. That was on 4/27/23 on page 3. The other way to not need a permit was if CUSD would perform some sort of action that allowed us to proceed without a permit, but CUSD indicated they preferred that we would get a permit, so we went ahead with that. 510, we were told to submit a preliminary review, so and not a complete conditional use permit application. So we did that as quickly as we could. And then let's see, 8/14, we were requested to complete a conditional use permit. This was the only request received up to this point that Tessellation submit a CUP application. So we shifted into overdrive at that point, and submitted our application in 4 days. And we were then also told on 9/23 that there would be there were incomplete portions of the application, which our understanding is somewhat normal. It goes through several rounds, and that we should reply by 11/22. Then we were called into a meeting with the City Hall on 10/5 and said, and they said, actually, we would like you to complete everything by 10/9. 10/5 was a Thursday, 10/9 was a Monday. That gave us about 24 business hours to complete a very, very long list of questions, and we did it. And at the same time, we also completely followed all of the staff's recommendations and requests in terms of what to do with parking. And we did all that in one business day.
And what was the date the school opened?
The school opened
at Regnart.
A normal school opening at the beginning of the school year. But our
August,
questions to planning had started way before we moved into the site.
When did you enter into the lease agreement with CUSD?
I don't know that exact date. Chris might be able to answer that question. January? Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think the summary here is we appreciate that we are out of compliance, but I want to make it clear that we were trying to be in compliance at every step of the way. So I think this is probably a very different case than someone who's just hoping to skate by and ask for forgiveness. That's not what we're doing.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I do have a couple of questions about the lease, and if I can share my screen here. Where is that? Okay. So this is part of the lease. It says that you desire to lease the entire property to operate your education program serving K through 12 students.
Correct.
But as I understand it, it's only supposed to be pre-K through 8 or 9.
Yeah, that's correct.
But the lease says that you can operate K through 12.
Right, but we're not going to. I mean, I think this is an example of writing a lease to give one more leeway than they might eventually need, and we don't need that.
Okay. So the next question, and I just asked you about this earlier today. So there's 3 different time frames that the public is allowed on campus, depending on which you believe.
Okay.
Is it your sign? Is it the first sign that's 7 to 4?
That's a fair objection.
Or 7 to 6, or what the lease says is 8 to 4?
That's a fair objection. So I talked to Chris about this earlier today. So one, I would say, with all due respect, I believe that this is a tenant-landlord issue more than a planning commission issue, but I could be wrong about that.
Well, because the public, that I've talked to, they're upset. They go, well, how come the lease says 8 to 4, but they say we can't be, using the facility during those times?
Well, and hopefully Chris can back me up on this, but our post-contract negotiations and clarity has been that we have the use of the building area through 6 o'clock, and that the public may start using the field at 4, and then the public may use everything starting at 6. So I cop to the fact that these signs look like they are in conflict and in the wrong place, and so that is easily fixable. But Chris, do you want to confirm that is our joint understanding?
Yes, thank you. So in regards to the open space, we are following the current open space agreement we have with the city of Cupertino, allowing for the community of access outside of the school day. And so as Grace mentioned, their school day could end as early as 4, but I think in the cases where you are going till 6, then that's when the public would be able to access the open spaces. So I am concurring.
We're using the blacktop and building area until 6 for our after-school program. And so Chris agreed and CUSD agreed that the public should not be using the blacktop and building area until after 6.
Right, right. I understand. But the lease says tenant agrees to allow the public ingress and egress to the fields and the blacktop areas prior to 8 a.m. and after 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. And now you're saying that is not the case anymore? So
That is the case for the field, and we specifically asked CUSD if we could change that to 6 o'clock for the field. I mean, for the building and the parking lot. And I think we do have that exchange in writing, but that is not in your current lease.
well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect the public to be using the buildings anytime, but the fields
Well-
and the blacktop, they should be able to access.
Well, the blacktop is an area we use for our after-school program. And so that's why we specifically asked for permission from CUSD, because if our kids are using the blacktop from 4 to 6, and the general public is using the blacktop from 4 to 6 with dogs and bikes and tennis rackets, it is problematic. So you're right. It could be one way or the other. Both is a little bit of trouble. So that's why we specifically asked CUSD for their guidance and approval on that.
So is there a document that shows this change in the lease terms or not?
I think we have an email exchange that confirms this, but I do not have that handy. So.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Oh, this is just a picture I took today of a car blocking the walking path, even though the sign says not to do that. Okay. All right, I think that is all that I have on this. If anyone else would like to talk about anything? Okay, then someone can make a motion.
So, Chair,
Actually, I did
Okay,
have
go
some
ahead,
questions.
David.
I think. So I'm curious. Part of the, there's an association here. Your previous location wasn't New Life Church, right? Is that correct?
Correct. And we
Okay.
had a lot more cars there than are proposed to be there in the future. So,
How big was the program when you were at that location? I mean, it seems like
it maxed
smaller.
out at 140.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Which is why we sought a larger campus.
And then this actually touches a little bit on the area that we were just talking about with regard to hours. I think I probably would have a question for staff about whether after-school programs would be covered by a different CUP than the educational program. That may actually address the issue about the time there. But
I think the after-school program is included in the CUP proposal. Is that correct?
Okay. Yeah. So I'm curious about. This will come up in the later discussion, but I'm a little curious about the discussion, the agreement you have with CUSD with regard to change of the facilities. If you were to, the only things that are before us here are really things about using the blacktop as a parking area in the separate issue in the shade structure at this point. But I'm just curious. How does the lease govern that part? If you decide.
We need CUSD approval to perform renovations, and so that for minor things, CUSD, I think, is under their own jurisdiction. For major things, we go through DSA. Okay. So there is a process for that, and we do have a shade structure that is now approved by CUSD and DSA. But if Chris could correct me here, but things like painting doors and that sort of thing, CUSD has allowed us to do that. Or replacing a broken fence, or
I think the area that I'm asking this question about is, so and this actually speaks a little bit back to the previous item. that we discussed around the zoning change, the expectation that the community might have about the form of Regnar changing in the future. It's not your intent, at least at this time. You know, there is no plan that you would well, I don't know. There's a discussion about parking lot. I don't want to burn this.
If I might guess, I mean, we are a nonprofit with a very, very specific mission to provide experiential education to gifted learners. Yeah. So anything outside of that is not our intent. Right. Nor do we have any designs on anything other than that. Okay. In that sense, we're a very simple organization. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, of course.
So, and Chris, I think the question is for you. In terms of the other CUSD schools, what are the public access hours?
Let me think off the top of my head here. The CUSD schools that are in the city of Cupertino and the city of Sunnyvale are governed by the open space agreements that we have with those two cities. For other schools in San Jose, Los Altos, Santa Clara, those follow just our general terms and conditions of our facility use. And usually it's anything after school, after the conclusion of the school day. And just to also mention this time, now with our ELOP program, our Extended Learning Opportunities program, those programs are now going until 6 o'clock. Whereas before the traditional school day ended, 2:30, 3 o'clock, but now all of our schools are required to have those programs, and they all go till 6 o'clock now.
Okay, so public use after 6 is pretty consistent with other CUSD schools?
Provided that we have those programs going on, and they are happening at all the sites, yes.
They're happening at all the sites in CUSD right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I have one question either for the city attorney or the planning staff. Related to this, also to parking, but if you are turning a church parking lot into essentially a park and ride lot, does that require a conditional use permit as well?
If it is owned by a public agency and if that serves their purpose and is a conditional use per our ordinance, then yes.
No, a church is not owned by a public agency though.
So, but this is this is an alternative parking arrangement that the school is proposing.
Right, but I mean, can any business say, hey, now I'm going to turn my parking lot into a park and ride lot for some external, private, non-public entity?
Are we going into the third resolution?
No, because it relates to whether the CUP should be approved at all.
But isn't it related to parking?
It's related to parking, but if you can't just go to a church and say, hey, rent us your parking lot and we're going to turn it into this park and ride for a shuttle service, I can't imagine that a business or a church would be allowed just to do that without some kind of approval.
But again, I feel like this touches on the parking issue and whether they should be using the church or another facility, or whether they should be doing satellite parking at all. But
can they use a facility at all? I mean, than a city facility, I'm not sure. So if someone could answer my question, do you need a conditional use permit to turn the parking lot of a business or a church from use by that facility into a park and ride lot, considering the minimum parking requirements that those businesses and establishments have? Because you're taking away parking that would otherwise be used for the church or the business.
I think the theory with the church...
Pay for a lease at New Life, if that matters.
Yeah.
So they're leasing the site, but if I just want to say from a land use perspective, the church's peak use is going to be on weekends when they're not in operation, which is why your question's a good one, that if this were, say, a business that was also open Monday through Friday and needed that required parking for its business operation, that would be an impact.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, now that Tessellations isn't leasing the building, I mean, that New Life Church could lease it to some other school now too, couldn't they?
So in response to that
Yeah.
specifically, any other uses that would require review would also require a parking review. So that's even for a business license level review, we require that parking review. So they'd have to show that they could accommodate that. At this point, I do believe that they would be maxed out with parking given this agreement, but that would be reviewed if those uses came in.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Just to be clear then, you're saying that at the McClellan location, if I wanted to open a daycare center there, or I think there's a sign there that looks like it's an after-school program there, that their conditional use permit would have to demonstrate that they have sufficient parking, knowing that there's another use on that site. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Anybody want to make a motion on this one?
I'll make the motion. Oh, if my screen didn't die, hold on. Okay. The Planning Commission recommends that the City Council determine that the project as proposed is categorically exempt from the CEQA per section 15301, blah, blah, blah. And that we approve the conditional use permit U-2023-002 as indicated in Exhibit A.
I'll second that, even the blah, blah, blah.
Okay. Is working? Okay.
The motion carries with Scharf voting no.
Okay, very good. Let me go to the other screen now. Back to Regnart. Okay, now we get to determining whether recommending approval of a parking exception to allow off-site parking in a non-conforming on-site parking lot located at 1170 Yorkshire Drive. And if the applicant wishes to respond to any of those specific residents that spoke about traffic and parking.
Sure, I'll try to do this very quickly. And they're somewhat in chronological order for the ease of my brain. One of the first objections was to our celebration of learning and how everybody would descend at the same time. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, but this is just not true. Our 13 homerooms all have their celebrations of learning at different times, so they're not simultaneous. We use the blacktop for that, so it would have no impact on street parking. And we also limit attendance, so a zillion uncles and grandparents are not actually allowed to attend. We have 3 tickets per student. Regarding the shuttle service, we actually have run the shuttle service. We tested it on that short time frame that we had, and we haven't been running it since because currently we have 0 staff parking on the street. So we are ready to spin up that shuttle service at any time that we no longer have a situation where we don't have 0 staff parking on the street and also some available spaces for visitors. I don't see our carpooling and biking and walking to work staff decreasing. If anything, it is increasing over time. It has actually increased since the time we submitted to the planning department. Similarly, I don't see a situation where we actually need anywhere near all those spaces at New Life. But we could certainly accommodate an additional 15 staff coming to work now with 2 shuttles going to New Life. It is also worth saying that the people going to New Life will not impact the morning traffic. They arrive at 7:30 or 7:40 before all traffic happens, and we actually have run the test and can get the shuttles down the horrificness of Bub Road at 740 before anything happens. So that we are not actually impacting that corridor with the New Life parking. And our previous campus was there. We had many more staff parking there, many more families parking there for the last 2 years. We operated in very close concert with New Life and St. Jude's, and there was nothing but praise for how we did that during those times. I want to clarify that for large events, when we have the quote 500 people, that's 500 people. That's not 500 cars. Over half those people cannot drive. So it's more like 100 cars, right? And they pretty easily fit in that back lot. So I just want to make clear that we're not trying to make space for 500 cars. Someone noticed the back gate parking violations. We noticed that as well. We have put cones up there, and so since that time that we put on cones, we have had no problems with people parking there. We actually did have to ask the police whether it was legal to park there because they were not sure. So after some deliberation, they said, we're still not exactly sure, but to play it safe, please don't. And so we have coned those off. Several people mentioned security regards to families coming from faraway regions. I would posit that families with small children are pretty much the most concerned about security in terms of anybody on the pie chart of security. So our population that's coming is not going to increase crime. Like they are more concerned about the safety of the neighborhood than anybody. They're also more concerned about speed of driving and safety of walking. They have little children. They're highly invested in a very safe neighborhood. And when we ask them to do something, they snap and do it for the most part. We also use an app called Dash Pass, so we know all the cars that are coming into the area for us, and so we keep a pretty close track of that. Congestion, of course, in the first week was tough. We were working things out, cars backed up. Nowadays, it's much better. I think some of the commissioners were actually there in the morning. We rarely spill cars out onto the street in the morning. The afternoon is trickier because we are matching cars with specific kids instead of just rolling them out of cars. So yes, in the afternoon, there are 5 to 10 minutes of backup depending on the day. Again, I would argue that compared to a school of 605 students at its maximum, we are still having a smaller impact than then. The complaints about McClellan and Bubb Road, we don't actually, you'd have to be nuts to leave our school and go by McClellan or Bubb. Like it takes a long time and nobody goes that way. So we've asked them to come in on Rainbow and out on Rainbow, and so the concerns about Rainbow, I think, are something to consider and be warranted, and are potentially warranted. But the concerns about Bubb and McClellan are really irrelevant to us and are more to do with the other schools that are still there. I come in on Rainbow every day, and honestly, I must dispute the gentleman's claim that it takes him 5 minutes to get out of his driveway. Like I'm sorry, but that's just not true. It's not that crowded. In the same way, we are not an expansion, as several people mentioned. We are a contraction. What else could go here, as Commissioner Sema said, but a school? If a school isn't in this space, it's either a business that's not a school or it's vacant. Both of those are probably bad. So we are probably the smallest organization that could possibly stretch and afford this campus. So finding a smaller school that could afford it would be really, really tricky. I mean, we pay $3 million. That's market value, and that's pretty much all we can afford, and we need the 300 students to basically cover that rent. So it's financially non-viable to have a smaller school or organization there. They wouldn't be able to do it. So in the long term, I think most people moved into this neighborhood knowing that there was a school there. And we're a school. We want to play by the rules as best as we can and be wonderful neighbors. But I think some of this, as one of the gentlemen callers said, just comes with the territory of being a school. We did stagger our pickup and drop-off times with CUSD's approval, so I think that is, I think that has been accomplished to their satisfaction. For the comments that are asking us to relocate, that would be an existential threat to us. I mean, we've put everything we've had into this campus. We've spent over $1 million on it already. It would probably mean we have to close. I mean, we really couldn't just relocate. I'm not sure how to respond to that. I think those are all my immediate responses. We have many neighbors that are in favor. They aren't here, but they are in favor, and they have actually attested that compared to when it was open with 600 students several years ago, it's actually less crowded. So that view has not been represented here tonight, but I know that view exists. So those are my direct responses. Hopefully that's adequate, and I would be happy to take any questions or sit down.
I have a question. So right now you have 70 staff? Is that
correct?
How do they all come at the same time and leave at the same time?
No, they do not. We have many part-time staff. We have after-school staff. So we have some staff that come at 10 and leave at 6. We also have, like all our math teachers, for example, are part-time because we teach math at the same time every day. So they often come a little bit late and leave around noon. There are other specialists that come at different times. So it is not a swarm of 70 that comes and leaves all at the same time. And there are also, like, there's cleaning staff, and we were asked by the staff to, include all that are ever there, right? And so that's what we did.
Sorry, follow-up question. So they were parking on the street, and you somehow resolved that issue. Can you talk a little bit more about how sustainable you feel that solution is going to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think it's sustainable indefinitely because it's working now and people seem to be happy. So, as you saw when you visited today, the street was literally devoid of all cars. So we're not even using the frontage portion of this. I mean, that's a different discussion someday. But right now we have literally made it so we have zero parking impact from the staff. And I don't see any reason why that couldn't continue indefinitely. We actually have a little more space in the back lot. You saw a little bit of space in the front lot. And people have gotten used to carpooling and some bike. And when we get 15 more staff, we will certainly either have to increase carpooling or use the shuttle. And both of those are viable. So I don't see this as a hold our breath option. We've been doing it for a while now and we're used to it. Thank you.
I have a few questions. Can I go?
Go.
Okay. So for clarification, the satellite parking at New Life Church, that's for the staff to park and to be shuttled, not for no students.
Correct.
Right?
It's
students
not for
come
students.
and go straight to the school.
They do. Okay. Yeah, and a lot of them carpool too.
Do the students carpool?
Yeah, we have a, now that COVID is on the decline, we have an interactive map where you can click and find people near you. And so every week there are more and more carpools.
Okay. So
yeah.
Because I assumed that, previously when it was a neighborhood school, most, like at least, 50% of the kids, would walk, bike or whatever, and, some would get dropped.
Yeah.
But now.
But even 50%, like if it's 50%, I think that's probably pretty accurate. There's not 600 kids within walking, but even 50%, that's more kids than we have now.
Yeah, but you're going to go up to 300, right? So
we're going to get to 300, yeah. So, but I think that's a good reference point, right? So, if we get there, then we're basically, and you assume 50% drove, it's hard to know, then we're right where they were before.
Yeah, so this is a question for maybe the staff. So 148 parking spot requirement, was it calculated based on, their 300 anticipated capacity operation, or is it based on the 605 capacity for Ridge North?
It's based on their proposal for 300 students.
300.
Yes.
Okay. So that means, the approvals that we are giving, is that going to be capped at 300? Because we don't want to see this, going beyond like 300 to 600 or something like that.
Yes, that 300 cap is included in the, actually the previous resolution that you approved.
Yeah, that's part of the proposal.
Is there an opportunity to look at, some other church's parking lot, or are you locked into, New Life?
No, not locked in at all. I mean,
Okay.
I don't think if for some reason the deal was, hey, the shuttle service is fine, but you have to find a different lot. Well, okay, we find a different lot,
Okay.
right? I mean, obviously, if that lot has to be 40 minutes away, it's a problem. But yes, we're super reasonable people and open to suggestion.
Yeah,
So yeah.
Because I know that area well, so there are a lot of churches, on Stelling.
Yeah.
And if there is one, more suitable, that would be better than, this one, because this one is like, as many of them
Yeah,
said.
we really don't care. Like we had that lease, we kept that lease because we wanted to honor it with the church. The staff wanted us to act really quickly, so we did what we could with what we had, right? But certainly we're happy to look at other options.
Okay. And in one of the slides that you shared, you said, after going to K9, you're going to move somewhere else. But then the study material that I saw, it said, you're going to operate there up to K12, like, every year adding a grade, and then eventually, move later on after hitting K12.
So our lease with Cupertino provides the ability for us to operate from K through 12. Our conditional use permit is asking for K through 9. So we would only be allowed to be K through 9, even though the lease said, the lease could say aliens, but we don't have a use permit for that. So when we negotiated the lease, none of this was on the horizon yet, right? And so,
okay.
but yeah, we fully understand that we're locking ourselves into a 9th grade top.
No, thanks for the clarification. But the material in the package, kind of implied that you're going to grow there up to K12, and then eventually move out.
Well, I can also say that given our current student ratio, K12 won't fit.
Okay.
So we don't want to put more than 300 kids on that campus.
And you said there's only 5% of the kids are from Cupertino. You kind of used it as a positive, like not cannibalizing Cupertino schools.
Sure.
Is there a restriction there, or is it just so happened to 5%? It could be any number.
Well, we've been operating for a few years, and that number has kept pretty steady.
Okay.
And when you look at our map, it kind of looks like you threw a tomato at the. It's sort of it makes sense, right? Like so I don't think there's anything mysterious there. I expect it to stay the same.
So the practical number would be in and around that, but there is no restriction.
Yeah, I will say, ironically, the reason it might go up is because families actually move to Cupertino to come to our school from Saratoga or New York, or so that happens, and so it may go to from 5 to 7 because of that. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, right?
Okay, good. I think. So this is a question for staff, Rex. What's the criteria used to conclude that there is no need for a traffic study?
So in this case, there would be 2 thresholds that we would have to meet to provide that. So for specifically our code requirements, because they're able to provide the required number of parking spaces, although through alternative means, that parking study is not required. And then for the CEQA requirements, because this is an exempt project, we wouldn't request any additional reports based on that.
So I'm not following it. So I think in terms of the traffic patterns, right? Like when it's a neighborhood school, the traffic patterns versus it's a school at large for entire Bay Area, so the traffic patterns would be different. So why isn't there a requirement to do a traffic study?
Let me just try and take that on. I think what Emmy had said, when you're looking at CEQA, it's a 2-step analysis when you're looking at an exemption. So the existing facilities exemption applies because this is a similar use, not more intensive than the prior school use. The only difference is it's a private operator versus a public operator. Unless there are unique circumstances or something unusual about the project, once a project qualifies as a categorical exemption, that's where the analysis would stop. So you pretty much would need to have some extraordinary or unusual circumstances that would merit you to go beyond that.
So there are two things, that stand out in terms of, differences compared to the previous use and this use. Previous use, neighborhood school, right? It's a lot more walking and biking versus, not everybody, having to come in the car. Now almost everybody is coming on the car. Carpooling or not, that's what percentage, that's a different, needs to be looked at. The other one, the student to the staff ratio. The previous school, they could get by, even with the 600 kids, they could get by with 47 parking spaces. Now, even for 300 kids, they need 148 parking spaces. So that's a significant difference, right?
Oh, that's correct. And I'd say when we're talking about the need for 148 parking spaces, that's a code requirement. I would seriously doubt they would need 148 spaces. They've got up to 85 faculty. Might need 85 if everybody drove and nobody carpooled. I'd say even that's unlikely. The 148 is based on the Cupertino code requirement, not on any operational analysis. That's assuming every faculty member drives and a provision on multi-use rooms having one parking space for every 56 square feet, which gets you like another 55 spaces. So at that calculus, the prior school, when Regnart was a public school, was not subject to a city permit, but they would have needed over 100 spaces. They only ever had 47. So the 148 is reflecting what, in my view, is a very high code requirement, not what's necessarily needed. I do think with the 47 on-site spaces they have, they do need off-site parking because, as you point out, the number of faculty, the lower faculty to student ratio, that's a difference. So you've got probably about, at your maximum use, you'd have about half the students Regnart had at its peak, but about twice the faculty that they had. I think they were in the 40s.
We have less than twice at their peak.
Okay.
But yeah,
But
you're
the
not
faculty is higher.
you're not
Yeah.
off. Yeah.
Right.
But the killer is the one parking space for every 56 square feet in your multi-purpose room. This is a multi-purpose room designed for a school with 600 people, and so that addition to the parking places puts us way over the edge and puts Regnart. I mean, Regnart, as you said, Regnart didn't come close to satisfying that either.
Well, no, the calculation on the multi-use room alone.
The calculation on the
50
multi-use room,
55.
forget if we had 0 staff, there are not enough parking
Correct.
spaces for
So-
either Regnart previously or us. But maybe the note there is perhaps that is contemplating a much larger population than is actually there, which is relevant in this case.
And
Okay.
one last thing is I didn't say it at the outset, and I meant to, is I think we'd recognize because of the student-teacher ratio, that's a change. And you're pulling from a larger region. It's not a local school anymore. While it's not on the agenda tonight, on, I believe, December 19th, City Council is permit parking for the neighborhood going to the City Council, which would effectively keep non-residential parking off of the streets during the school hours. So the permit parking in conjunction with the off-site parking, I think, is the best means to solve any parking issue you might have in the
double
future.
protection. Yeah.
Right, because your staff would not really even have the option during school hours to park on the street.
Yeah, and they don't now, but this would make it so they.
So since you brought it up, that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about as well. So permit parking, as and when that happens, my understanding is, the residents have to pay for the permit parking, like some fee or whatever, annual fees. So, but since that's being, mandated by, it's a requirement that's being put on the residents because of the school, can we somehow, get school to pay for it instead of residents, bearing the cost? I don't know how to tie that.
Yeah, it's currently not conditioned. You're correct. I believe it's $40 a year, something like that per resident. So I do not know if that's something that could be arranged, where that would be something that Tessellations would be willing to do for the neighborhood, because
Well, it depends if it's 40 times 1,000,000 or 40 times 100. Like, I don't know what the number is, so.
well, we could certainly
get 40
get that.
times unknown
But
right now,
typically,
so.
I don't know if there's any other example where anyone other than the residents have paid. I think it's always tied to the residents.
That's correct. But those are public schools. This is a private school, right?
Correct.
There's a difference.
And we are a nonprofit, right? So we are not a flush organization.
Right, but
yes, but we're willing to.
There is a difference between neighborhood school
Understood.
serving the neighbors.
No disagreement.
Right. So
Yeah.
versus this one serving public at large, right? And that's a requirement that's coming on the residents because
Sure.
of the nature of the school.
Yeah.
So, Luke, did Apple pay for the permit parking over by Lawson School, or are the residents paying for those permits?
I do not know of every example, but my understanding, talking to our transportation division, is that the residents generally are picking up, if not 100% of the time, are picking up that tab. There could be instances where another user that essentially brought the parking issue. So, but yeah,
right. It was Apple employees parking on those streets, and Apple could not stop them, even though they told them not to do it.
Right, because you do run into the issue. It is a neighborhood, but when streets are public, it's seen as everybody has an equal right to park on a public street. So, in that sense, you could say the residents are getting a benefit of controlling who parks on the street. They get to, other people don't, and therefore the fees attached to the resident. But,
right, okay.
Okay, minor details. So on your slides, it's not Monte Vista, it's Monta Vista. Monte Vista is in Danville.
Fair enough. I wrote it today in a hurry. We're definitely not trying to shut down either a real school or a school that doesn't exist.
I had another question, if I can. Chris, question for you. So, as background to this, I'm also part of the city's Safe Routes to School program, and I have been for years. And I'm also the chair of an organization called Walk by Cupertino since 2014, where we look at the percentage of kids who walk and bike to school across CUSD and FUHSD. I have never seen more than 15% walking and biking at any school. So I'm actually kind of surprised at the numbers that are getting thrown around here of 50% and 60% of kids at Regnart were walking and biking. Is there any do you have any data on that? Because that would make it a miracle school in my book, because I've never seen that.
I'm not aware of any particular data. It's something I think I can come back and see if I can get some information for you, but I don't have anything at my disposal. No, I don't.
If I could comment on that as well, because I would participate a lot in Safe Routes to School in a number of different schools. I was the PTA president at Regnart in a number of those years when they were very close to the maximum. And the numbers were, Regnart in particular, we were kind of embarrassed that it was very low, typically under 20%. I think that there was a time when it was high, when there were a lot more kids, walking in the nearby community. But for that time, my son is 22 now, so for that time when he was and he had all 6 years at Regnart, the numbers were much lower than that.
Well, I mean, I will tell you, we look at these numbers every month for every school in the city, and we get very excited when it gets above 12%. So
that means there were over 500 kids being driven to Regnart.
Yeah, I would be shocked if it was anywhere over 15%.
Yeah, well, that's great data for us to have. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it matches residents who say, hey, when this was in full, obviously last year, no, because the school was closed, but when this was in running like a normal school, there was a lot more traffic than there is now.
I can certainly attest to that. As a PTA president at the time,
Yeah,
we had
unfortunately,
we
we
had a
don't
number of
have-
issues around things about how we get kids in and out of.
And we don't have videos
Bars.
from then, but we just have personal accounts. So it's great that you experienced that.
So I actually had some staff questions related to this. So I'm curious. At Regnart there was a lot of what would be, so it was clear that there was a parking shortage, a space shortage there. At the time we were there. At that time, I remember that I believe there were 620 kids there. That number may be slightly different than the ones that were reported here because I think the special ed programs are counted differently. I'm curious about at that time, how. So first of all, who was the governing body determining whether that was okay or not? Whether that's DSA, is that a city thing? And I'm curious if you could speak to usage of the street parking.
Yeah, so the use itself would have been governed by the CUSD as they were the property owner, and our code allows for them to basically operate in the fashion that they see fit. As for the street parking, that is public parking currently. Oh yeah, absolutely. So the street parking is public parking currently, and it remains that way unless a permit parking is approved.
Yeah, okay. And then I'm curious, there is a parking exception here that kind of talks about, that the mitigation is that there would be kind of offsite parking. Can you speak to how that is monitored, how that would normally be monitored in a situation like this? We've had this discussion. I think there have been a lot of discussions around things like, when there's a traffic program for Apple or something that is done in a certain way. But I'm curious, for the benefit of the community, how is that normally handled?
So from my experience, and if you want to clarify
Microphone.
this at all, but that would be handled by our code enforcement and through our enforcement department. And so because we are a reactive agency, it means that we would have reports coming in that someone is acting out of compliance, and then we would go and investigate.
Okay. And then, there was public comment that it talked about issues with parking. I'm curious, of course, one of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to have remote parking become, a problem somewhere else. That is covered under the city's regulations for the church, right?
So, as in, is there adequate parking at the church to
Yeah.
accommodate? Yes. So the church currently has 132 spaces. They utilize or are required to provide at least 50 based on their use and other uses permitted at the site.
Okay.
And so they have an 82 kind of extra
Excess,
spaces.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe that's probably it for me on those.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so I have a question to the fellow commissioners, right? So the numbers that you said, 12% walking, biking, I'm curious where that data is coming from, because I've been dropping and picking up my kids because I'm away from school. I see tons and tons of kids, walking and, biking. Less biking, but a lot of walking, Lincoln in that area, Monte Vista and all that. And also, I've seen the same at Eaton as well. So I'm just curious, where those 12% number is coming from.
Sure, yeah. So Safe Routes to School, we capture that data every month. We go to every single school and we count. No, Safe Routes to School does a count once a year. Walk by Cupertino does it every month. And we have been doing it every month for a few years. I'm happy to send you that data.
Count the bikers or walkers as well?
We count the number of cars and we count the number of bikes. We don't count the number of pedestrians. Safe Routes to School, no, wait a minute. Safe Routes to School does. They count the number of pedestrians every year, sometimes 2 times a year. So, and that's been going on again for a few years. The number has never gone over 20% from either walk bike or, I mean, that's well documented. There's tons of data on this.
Yeah, so I'm not expecting,
Not
the
even
walk
over
numbers
15.
to change dramatically, because people that are like, within certain distance, they will walk. The people away, they're going to always, drop. But the biking numbers, I know it's low, but since the McClellan bike
No.
lane, it has increased a little bit, because I
No.
see bikes.
Actually, Monte Vista has one of the lowest walking and biking numbers in all of the high schools, and that's an issue that we've had, that we've been trying for years to try and increase that number, and we haven't been very successful.
Okay. But it is higher than the elementary.
It's higher than,
Yeah.
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 But it's because, they're more independent.
Yeah.
But even though it's higher than the other schools, it's the lowest. It's not the lowest, but it's one of the lowest of the 5 high schools.
That's high schools, but high schools are much wider distance. But the
But the
elementary
other schools are even
elementary
lower.
schools are no neighborhood, right?
But they're lower than Monte Vista even.
For biking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
walking
know.
and
For-
biking.
no, for biking, I understand.
Walking
For-
and biking, active transportation.
I've almost
Happy to
never
share the data.
seen an elementary school kid at Eaton ride their bike. I do know one that did, but it's very rare.
And it's very
probably
rare
nice.
because
Yeah.
they're too young, right? So
Wow.
but walking, I've seen a lot of parents walking their kids and and picking them up.
We can. I
Okay,
think
we're
that's
digressing
yeah,
here
we're
a little bit,
digressing.
so
but
let's
it's
get back.
it's well documented.
Right.
So
So yeah, we need to move on this. So I think my comments are, we should put something in this resolution as far as when a shuttle service is mandated based on the increased enrollment. Because right now, yeah, you're at 190 something now, 188. But, when it gets much higher, yeah, there's going to be an issue. And I didn't see anything in there that requires the use of the off-site parking. Just that, if we feel we need it, then we'll do it.
Our bars currently have zero staff impact on neighborhood parking. So I think the number we're looking at is increasing staff from 70 to 85. And so
And
our
students from,
students from 188 to 300, but
Yeah.
the shuttle is for staff.
right.
Right, so our current bar is that we will remain, unless there is talk of allowing us to use frontage road later, we will remain 0%, zero car impact of staff vehicles on neighborhood parking. And so we would be totally happy to have a amendment or something that's just stated that. And then if that means we need to use a shuttle or helicopters or whatever it is, then we will have zero impact.
Yeah, given your planned growth, the parking impact, the street parking impact would be, we really talk about 15 or 20.
Yeah, and we could
delta.
actually accommodate that now, given the amount of carpooling. But if that doesn't continue, then,
Right.
or even if that changes now, I mean, our staff know they can't park on the street.
Just to comment on that, if the permit parking comes to city council, I think this amendment that you're considering is moot because they won't be able to park on the street. I would prefer we don't overcomplicate things by adding extra to what's already in the resolution.
I would agree. I actually wonder, whether that's whether having a residential parking only is an over restriction, given that there's not very many cars around there. I mean,
Yeah, I would tend to agree. From my trips in the neighborhood, I honestly don't understand why we need to have permit parking in that neighborhood. There is nobody parking on the street. Nobody. There's also in front of the school, there's an entire side that doesn't have housing on it that could all be street parking, and its only restriction right now is Tuesdays for street sweeping.
Yeah.
Besides that, anybody in the neighborhood from anywhere could park there without any issue or restriction. I don't understand why we're making this extremely difficult for the
Well,
school.
we're not doing permit parking here, but the residents can petition for permit parking.
They could.
I mean, they can if
Yeah.
it's necessary. And, you know, if the school does a good job and keeps the staff from parking on neighborhood streets, that's wonderful for everybody. Personally, I didn't think it was an issue for the frontage to the school, which is not in front of houses. I didn't really see a problem with people from the school using that space. Maybe I'm missing something,
Right.
but
And presumably you could fit 10 or 15 cars in that space.
Yeah, it's actually, if you take away the loading zone, which we don't need, I think it's 20.
So that frontage on Yorkshire, I was looking at that as well. So that was used for parking when Regnart was a school?
Oh, 100%.
I don't know. Yeah.
By staff and
loading
by-
zone. It was
by-
a loading zone for.
Well, the
pickup.
yellow part was a loading zone, but that whole frontage road, all the way in front of those trees, and the 6 spaces or 4 spaces or how many are right in front of the school, and the ones right across the street on which there's no driveways, was fair game for staff and families.
So from my perspective, if we just split traffic, let's leave traffic for a second. If we just focus on parking, right? I mean, I understand it was an issue. I clearly it was an issue.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you've resolved it. And if you can park on Yorkshire along the street, along the school property, so not on the residential side, like people used to do it when Regnar
Yeah,
was
that
open,
even pushes
apparently.
out the shuttle need.
It pushes out the shuttle need even
Yeah.
further, and potentially you may never need the shuttle if you continue to expand your. And then, of course, if we put in the permit parking in December, then the whole discussion is moot.
Yeah, unless the permit parking
so-
also is on that side, which would be hard, but
Right.
that's a different
so,
issue.
So
Yeah.
from a parking perspective alone, it sounds like there's no immediate issue right now.
Well, and I think
needs-
that's what the resolution is about. The resolution is strictly about parking
right.
exception.
So sorry, yeah. So if we can just, I feel like there isn't a major, there's no there in terms of parking right now that I can hear, or in the future, it sounds like. So I think maybe we focus more on the traffic, which does seem to be an issue that we can talk about, that we can look at resolutions.
No, the
Before we
traffic,
close
that
on
would
the
have been in
parking,
the,
so
Traffic is part of the other previous.
on the church, do we know the space that Teslations is vacating, what that's going to be used for? If there is going to be a future school there, something else, then if you are counting 81 of those spots, for Teslations, then what's going to happen to them?
We have subleased that to a very small, low-traffic, after-school tutoring organization. So they need very few parking spots. So it's already subleased.
You continue to be the leaseholder then.
We are
for
the leaseholder
the
there.
teaching space
Yeah.
there.
for how long is your lease? Till
We
when?
have 2 more years, but we can renew it, and so we
Okay.
plan to do so.
So-
That's up to the church.
Okay. So Seema, if you wanted to talk about traffic, that was the previous resolution that you should have brought that up. And yeah, I which is one reason that I voted no, because just today, I'm seeing parents parking on Folkestone, well, not on the curb, just stopping in the middle of the street, letting their kids out to walk to the school. Some of them were parking on the street and walking their kids to school. If there was any permit parking needed, it would be because of that, and it would have to be like no 30-minute,
Right.
no 30-minute exception.
Yeah.
Not for the staff, but for
Yeah.
to control.
I would
hey, this
argue-
is a public school issue.
Yeah.
Everywhere as
Yeah.
well.
Well, and we can keep trying to train our parents.
We're
right?
not discussing that isn't something relevant to every single school. So I'm not sure why we're picking on these guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So today we're making recommendations. So, one of the questions that I had was whether, what was the progress of the application for a parking permit, and I would actually suggest that, perhaps it makes sense to, whether it's done as a separate permit, that you perhaps, ask for permit parking on the area in front of that's fronting on the school.
Or that we ask for
Yeah,
permit.
so you have it, and that would be another, and obviously another opportunity here would be that that perhaps some number of parking permits be allocated
To
for
the
your
school.
purchase. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you would have to manage them. You'd have to manage them, and that becomes a sort of a. If you needed 4 spots so that you didn't have to do a shuttle, then that would be something that might be open to you. But yeah. I
And
think
similar
that-
how we use the back lot, like we can actually put more cars in the back lot if we need to. But yes, that would be very welcome.
Yeah, I think one of the things here is really that, I have a friend who lives in the Lawson, that Lawson area permit thing, and of course, that turns out to be, although that has a purpose, and there was a problem with Apple employees, it becomes a problem when somebody comes to visit them.
Yeah.
Right, and then considering the level of the problem now, I realize, actually, of course, beginning of every school year, the problem, the issues that were raised in a number of the emails that we got were, very true every year at Regnard as well. There was a lot of, people trying to figure out how they're going to do this, and when this is not. I think if it's possible to get to something that's relatively manageable for the community, then there's a time. That really is a time to say, okay, do we want not to do permanent parking, or do we want to look at maybe different ways to do permanent parking that will serve the neighborhood well?
Right. Well, we're open to any and all of those suggestions. Yeah.
And I think related to how this was managed at a time when it was Regnard and public school, and some of these limitations. We had some number of large events. They really would be events where 1,000 people would be there. Perhaps that would be something where again, just a recommendation to consider on the evenings. If the school has to identify the nights when those are going to happen, that perhaps then that street parking might be something that becomes available, as opposed to trying to put.
Oh,
everybody
you
in
mean
the
as an
blacktop.
exception to permit
that
parking.
doesn't mean that you might not still need to have overflow
Right.
space.
Okay. I
in
didn't
the
realize
blacktop.
that was a possibility,
Yeah,
but that would be a great compromise.
Yeah. But I think that's something that, again, for a lot of the people who've been a long time in that neighborhood, and I think that, the benefit of having a school there probably outweighs the couple nights where there's a lot of people there, a lot of activity there. So I would just say that's just something to consider. Consider. I think that it appears to be possible to have dialogue. So
Well, we're very open to that.
So can you talk about using the blacktop as a parking lot? Is this like basketball courts or recreation area?
It's
or
basically it's a pretty boring blacktop with some basketball hoops on it, and so in events we've tried this already once to test it and make sure it works, and it looks a little bit like a Taylor Swift concert with everybody coming in and parking with us, but we cone everything off, and then we don't use that area for the event, and the event is in the multipurpose room, and then we get everybody back out. And so, yes, there are people coming into the neighborhood and leaving, but again, we didn't even need the front lot. In this case, we attempted to fit all families and staff into the back lot, and we successfully did that with a all-school event.
And how many attendees? Ballpark.
I think it was 500.
So this is during the time when the campus would normally be open to the public, right?
This
After
was
school?
it a Saturday? It was a welcome picnic.
So it was a Saturday when normally the school would be available to the public to use.
True, but our lease does contemplate a limited number of events on weekdays and on weekends and nights. So
No, events are fine. I mean,
yeah. For the field, we also pay for the field during that time. Yeah.
Okay.
I would actually, just so before we get to the end here, I do want to comment that, I understand that the issues here, there's been been difficult, difficult for the community, to have Regnar no longer be a public school. I actually feel like the process that CUSD went through to try to find a school and to be mindful. I know Chris well because I went and complained many times about issues around traffic and how can we do things better, and CUSD has always tried to do, of course, their boundary is right up to the street. They've always tried to do the right thing. I feel like there was a pretty good resolution here in terms of, they could have easily given the cost of the rent, they could have easily been something where the tuition is not so high, and then they get 500 people, and then you really would have a situation which would probably be much more friction in the community. So, I'm glad that this particular one worked out this way. I think, I don't hope that this will be happening at a lot more schools, but at the same time, I am glad that we're if we can maintain the character of the community better by making a slightly easier path for private school to occupy the space that was previously a public school. I think that's a big benefit. I think that I also had asked a question about, was there a plan to change things? Would you take the northern part of the field and turn it into a parking lot? Would you restructure the buildings? It doesn't seem like that's in the, in the big picture. I think that's also been a good part of this one, and I believe in the spirit of the kinds of things that the reuse committee was looking at. That it was not going to be, that if it were not possible, if the barriers to being able to have a private school take over a spot like this became too high, then what you're looking at is, the school would go away, it would become houses. I live in a house that used to be part of where Hoover School was, so, maybe that's good, maybe that's less impact from the community standpoint. There are lots of different things that could come. I think that having some continuity with the school does have some value, so.
Yeah, well, thank you for those words. We would prefer to change very little.
Okay, someone can make a motion.
I seem to be the motion person, so I'll go. The Planning Commission recommends that the City Council determine that the project as proposed is categorically exempt from CEQA per Section 15301, because it can be seen that the use of the existing public school site as a private educational facility involves only minor physical changes to the site, and therefore will result in negligible or no expansion of use, and then none of the exceptions in CEQA guidelines apply. Number 2, approve the parking exemption EXC 2023-009 as indicated in Exhibit A.
I second the motion.
So where is the 300 restriction in which of these resolutions?
The 300
That was in the second
previous one.
resolution.
Yeah.
Previous
The
one.
conditional use permit.
Okay, vote.
We would, yeah.
The motion carries with Sharp voting no.
Okay, so we've been going for 2 hours now. No, 3 hours. So why don't we take a 5-minute break before the next item?